Hello and welcome to episode 51 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. Here is your new official host, Growl. Squishy and I, we've been reading the comments. We really want to shout you guys out. I appreciate all the feedback you've been giving us on the show. So we've actually removed Tettles from the show for having too many bad takes. We don't know who to replace him with, so we just have Thor Loser here. Let me know right in the comments, who do you want to see on the podcast to replace Tettles? But until we get that feedback, it's just going to be me and Squishy. How you doing today, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing pretty good. It was a good last week of PTR testing, and man, the raid looks pretty sick. I don't know if you did any raid testing, Grau, but holy crap, it looks really
Yeah,
beautiful.
I actually did. That'll be the main subject of today. There's a decent amount of stuff that we kind of knew about, we've talked about over the last podcast, but now we've actually got to go in and see all these things. We've checked out the raid. We've seen the new dungeon, the Eco Dome Mythic Plus. We also get to see some other stuff about like clash balance. We saw the implementation of the lever stuff. So yeah, there's a whole lot of good stuff to talk about. Where do you want to start?
I think we mentioned the raid. Let's just get to the raid, man. Um,
Right on.
the first
First of all,
day.
so there was supposed to be 3 days of testing, or was it two?
It
Either
was
way,
2 days.
the very first day though was completely canceled. Right, there were so many people on the server, and it just like blew up, and nothing happened to those bosses. Right.
Yeah, the server, there were some massive server issues, and it was unfortunate because I think there was three bosses to be tested that day, but they were like the first three bosses, so I don't think it was they missed that much. The harder bosses they got tested the next day, so we got to see some damn cool bosses.
Yeah, I don't normally do raid testing, but I did happen to see all four of the bosses in heroic, and then they did some normal testing too, which I mean, I don't know, nobody cares about normal, but yeah. So the first, I guess we can just go boss by boss if you want to talk about it. We got some
Yeah.
footage lined up. So the first boss was Forge Weaver Eras, I think is the name. The room was kind of like a lab almost. It was very purpley, and there was like kind of sciency stuff going on, and there was some obelisk going on in the room, and I guess this is a little bit of like a tank fight if you want to talk about like, how the boss moved and how the phases worked.
Yeah, so the footage I'm showing is just normal because I didn't do the heroic one, but the fight is mostly the same. There's some like pillars on the side, and people periodically get targeted by the pillars, and they summon ads that slowly walk towards the pillars. And you basically just have to like kill the ads before they get to the pillar. So you just stack them under the boss, and then you AoE the ads down. It's basically the sum of it.
Yeah, it was an ad fight, but it was, I think, a very fun iteration of an ad fight because there was lots of like little mini waves. So it's not like you felt like you really had to hold your cooldowns a lot of the time. Maybe you might for like very specific parts on Mythic, but it was more just like, constantly three ads at a time would spawn on the boss, and you'd be slowing them and cleaving the ads down until they get the obelisk. There's a little bit of strategy for where you put the ads in the room, because you could see based off of, there was a little animation when you drop the ads, right, and it would show you which obelisk the ads were going to go to, so you could kind of decide like, oh, if we have a lot of damage here, you just put them right on top of the boss, or maybe you could put them a little further away to buy yourself more time. And I thought it was like a really good sort of like mid raid boss of like, if this was a really super hard boss or annoying boss, I could see it being frustrating, but I think it'll just be like a blast tons of AoE damage, kind of early fun phase one.
Yeah, it's cool because if you need more time, you can place the ads further away because you know which pillar they're gonna go to by that pink line that you see on screen there. So like if you need more time and you have like boomkins and multi doubters, you can actually drop them like across the room so they slowly walk through the boss, and you just get more time, which I think is like an interesting distinction that you can have. Other people you can just on normal and heroic when it doesn't really matter, you just drop them right on the boss and that's perfectly fine. So
Yeah, I think my favorite part of this fight, though, to skip ahead a little bit, is the sort of enrage phase of the
oh
fight.
yeah,
So
let's.
basically, when the boss gets a low, this is, I mean, obviously, I don't have as steep of a raiding history as most. Maybe Squishy may correct me, but I don't think I can think of a raid boss that had an enrage like this, where basically it creates like this rift on one side of the room, and it starts pulling everybody towards it. And I'm pretty sure, at least maybe this is in my head, but I'm pretty sure the pull would get stronger and
Yes.
stronger the longer you were in the fight. And so like, it's not really like, oh, you're dying, or like, oh, there's a strict timer, quote unquote. Like, I can imagine a crazy moment where, like, you have demon hunters like jumping, like barely trying to claw at the boss, and you have like the silly like mage shenanigans with alter time and warlock gateways and stuff, and you're like barely holding on to kill the boss. Obviously, this is like an early boss, so it probably won't be that tight, but at the same time, I thought it was a really, really cool, unique enrage mechanic in a boss fight. It was a really good spin on it, I think.
I agree. I mean, also just like visually seeing the like you getting fighting against it, you're losing more and more as you start going towards it. It's just a very very cool thematic way to enrage rather than the standard like boss enrages everybody just dies type thing.
Yeah, like as a caster, usually getting sucked towards something is like not a fun feeling. Like you don't like that, but I think the way thematically it worked with the boss and how it was an enrage, it really, really worked. I would hope that the boss is such a difficulty that on Mythic you're gonna want to less that phase, and that's gonna be kind of like a tough damage check. My only critique on this boss is that it did seem a little light on mechanics, especially the enrage. There wasn't really much going on. It felt like you were kind of just like sitting there and working against the current or whatever, which is like okay, I guess. But I think after testing and on Mythic especially, it'll get a little more complex.
Yeah, it was weird because we'll have to see what the Mythic has because, like you said, Heroic there wasn't much going on. It was like drop the ads, kill the ads, and just dodge stuff, and that was basically it. So
Yeah,
the next boss though, the optional boss,
quote unquote optional.
They're like right in the way too. They're not like off to the side. You literally have to, like, you can see the map here on the screen. You have to walk through this area. You can just not kill them though. It's so weird.
I'm still going by my cook that you need a demon hunter to summon the boss.
Baby.
That's why it's optional. So like you go there and there's like a thing that a demon hunter can interact with. I don't know. Maybe it's burnt at this point. It's probably burnt, but sometimes you like a little bit of a crisp.
But yeah, the 3-target cleave fight, very similar to the Council of Dreams. People did not like that fight because 2 of the bosses could not be controlled. But in this one, only one of the bosses cannot be controlled, which means that you pretty much have stacked 3-target cleave the entire time. What did you think of this, girl?
So one point I'm just gonna mention because it was such a big part of BTR is this boss lagged really bad. We were having issues with like basically across the raid with frame rate. So one of the mechanics that I thought was kind of interesting was you would get these puddles would spawn around the room, these void puddles, and then players would randomly get marked with a debuff. The debuff you could use to clear the void puddles, but it would grow over time on your guy, and the debuff would hurt more and more.
Yeah.
And so I think it was kind of an interesting sort of like group mechanic of, oh, like it doesn't force you to do it per se because the debuffs kind of like bounce around or whatever. So like let's say you get it and it's like, oh, I just popped my combustion and I really don't want to move around. It's not going to be like a super big setback because you could just kind of dispel it and someone else can grab it or whatever. But at the same time, like, oh, this is an okay moment for me. I'm going to make a play here and pop my defensive and clear all the puddles. So I'm not quite DPS brained enough to like just hate every mechanic. I kind of appreciate the freedom that they give you there. So there was also another interesting mechanic. It was the hunt where the demon hunter, I don't remember which one, it essentially targets you and it creates a line towards you and you sort of have to like soak it. It's like shared damage, but the line sort of like stretches depending on where you move, right? Like it's not just like a set on the ground. So you can kind of choose how big or small you want it. And it's kind of, I guess it was like a kind of interesting spin on it. And from what I was reading in Mythic, there's going to be multiple of the hunts going on and you'll only be able to soak one. So I think that's a mechanic that's definitely going to be a big, I don't want to say pain point in a negative way, but it's going to be the theme of the fight on Mythic is going to be managing your hunts and making sure that you give enough space for everybody to get in there and not overlapping them and stuff.
Yeah.
Overall, I think it was okay. I think thematically, like I like the room. The room is really cool. I think the bosses are really cool. Mechanics are kind of whatever. Like, it was just a lot of normal stuff that you've kind of seen in WoW. Drops puddles, you run away from them, you soak the puddles. Group soak damage and stuff. So I don't know. What did you think tanking it?
I didn't take it. I play Evoker now in my guild, so like from a Evoker standpoint, 3-target cleave the entire way. It's like yes, please. Like that's perfect.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Thematically, I think it works so well. Like the hunt is super cool, seeing it like almost like used against you in a way. The arena with like the fell outside is really cool. I'm not sure how I feel about the debuff management, like you said, because the debuff is dispellable, and when you dispel it, that's when it jumps. So I don't know like what they're gonna do with that on like Mythic and stuff. Like, are you gonna have to weak aura it? Like, if there's more on Mythic or something. But I have a feeling that it might become a weak aura mechanic, and I'm not in love with that. But I
Yeah,
will
I
say,
can kind of see that. I guess I was kind of hoping it was going to be a little bit smaller part of the fight where like you can manage it without it. But yeah,
I hope so too.
if it becomes something that's really tough, I can see that being annoying.
I hope it's like dispel at 8. Like, if you see an 8 stack, you just dispel it and just move on with life. But we'll have to see. Um,
Yeah.
the one thing you did mention was at 100 energy, so I think it's like every minute and a half or so, one of the demon hunters does an ultimate, where they turn meta and do like a group ultimate. You can see one of them on the screen right now. This is the Havoc one, which is basically just like blazes, except it's like one of the ends is like fixed on a point. So when you move, it like rotates around a point. It's basically just blaze though.
Yeah, it's Blazes, but it's not Blaze. And yeah, the aesthetics of the boss fight is really cool. For people who are just listening on audio, essentially it's like imagine just like a pretty small ring, you know, you're always in range of the boss no matter where you are, and it's encroached in like fell flames, these like green flames everywhere. On PTR, you could actually just kind of walk through them and it didn't really hurt you if I remember.
Yeah.
I assume they're going to make that a wall or fix it or whatever. And yeah, all of the bosses are using demon hunter themed abilities. One comment from one of the demon hunters in our guild was like, "Damn, I wish my abilities looked like that." Like, you know, imagine like a really big, souped-up version of all the demon hunter things. Whether it's like Fell Rush, there's this crazy big eye beam. You know, like I mentioned the hunt earlier, and then yeah, there is essentially these mini intermissions where one demon hunter will use its ultimate. It'll go to the middle of the room and sort of like do its thing. The other ones actually, I think, jump out of the arena and take reduced damage, but you can still
You
like
can still
dot them
dot
and
them, yeah.
you can still do stuff to them. So yeah, I think as Squishy mentioned, like Dev Evoker or like Shadow Priest, like that small target, you know, 3 target
Mark's
cleave is
Hunter
gonna
was
be
kind of
really,
destroying this
really good.
boss.
Yeah, Mars Hunters and Shadow Priest, what I remember, were going crazy on this fight.
Yeah. Like one of the did you see the enrage for this boss, by the way?
No, we did not. So like I mentioned, we were having some lag problems, so we didn't like we kind of just decided to kill it a little bit early and then take a break here because we were like kind of demotivated by the lag, but we did
That
not
makes
milk it
sense.
out to see the enrage.
So the enrage is at like just under 7 minutes, and all three meta and perform their ultimate simultaneously.
Oh, that's so cool. I bet so technically you could still kind of live, but not
You
really.
can, yeah, it's like you have the blazes going on, you have to soak the orbs, and you have the fell dev going across the arena. Like, there's no surviving that for very long, right? Because you can't soak the orbs and the fell dev at the same time. So
That's really cool.
the interesting thing is, on Mythic, apparently the mechanic is in each of the intermissions. Um, like the third boss of Floodgate, how people are like tethered, and if you walk too far apart, it yanks you back together and does damage.
Oh no.
So apparently the Mythic mechanic is the intermission, like has that tether.
Oh, just the intermission. Okay.
Yeah,
That's not too bad then.
that's not too
That's
bad,
interesting.
but it's definitely interesting when it comes to like orb soaks or stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's a really interesting mechanic. So one thing that is kind of a theme of I think these fights and I think maybe the next couple raids and dungeons we'll see is Blizzard mentioned that they kind of wanted to step away from weak auras and like try and make mechanics more about like okay, just thinking about it and trying to solve it. And I think that their first iterations in the beginning of this expansion were like just very, very swirly heavy. Like so many bosses, whether it was in dungeons or raids, kind of felt like bullet hell. If you think about like, Queen Ansarak Lions or just like, Cauldron of Carnage, where it's just like, what is going on here? There's just so many, like every single fight just feels like a lot of swirlies. Now it does feel like they're sort of going in a direction where they're starting to think like, that whole idea of like, oh, what if you have a blaze line on you, but it's kind of like anchored in one way and you're rooted to another guy, right? And it's like, how a weak aura couldn't possibly figure that out for you, but at the same time, like if you're really spatially aware and thinking, you can kind of like come up with a solution of where you can be not hurting the raid and stay safe at the same time. So
yeah,
I think it's something that we're gonna be looking out for and seeing a lot more of Blizzard cooking on non weak aura mechanics. And
Yeah, speaking of
I'm
weak aura.
interested. I'm interested to hear what you think about this next boss
Yeah, I was
fight.
gonna
So it
say,
is.
speaking of weak auras, we have the next
Yep.
boss, which is the boss that everybody has identified as the weak aura boss. Um, the way to describe this boss is it's like Tetris. You're placing like Tetris walls one at a time in one of 6 lanes. And if any of the lanes ever hits 6 walls, the boss enrages and you die. So you can see there, like, we just placed a wall in 3 of the lanes on the left, and that's it. And the tank also places one there on the left, and then 3 more people get walls here, so we place them in these lanes for whatever reason, and then we get breaks. So the boss marks a bunch of people with the final one, which is breaks, and if you are in front of a wall here, it will then break one wall. And that's all the fight works. It is a pure single target patchwork fight where all you're trying to do is play Tetris to not have any lane get up to 6.
Yeah, so from a non-weak aura point of view, assuming that you're not using weak auras, I found it really, really cool. So picture it's essentially a quarter of a circle, whereas the boss is in the point of it, and the room is very, very small. One of the smallest boss rooms for a raid fight that I can remember as of recently. And around the round part of the circle, there's these 6 pillars, and constantly over and over throughout the fight, the boss will mark players with these arrows 4 at a time. And when you get hit by an arrow, you essentially get a wave shot at you that does a pretty hefty dot to yourself and anyone else that's being hit by that wave. And like Squishy mentioned, there's this Tetris mechanic where it's encroaching the wall behind you and the room is getting smaller and smaller. And if any of the walls get too close to the boss, it's essentially just a wipe, where I think it's like 6
Yeah,
in
it's
total.
6.
So basically, the way that we ended up doing this boss, I didn't really watch too many other guilds do it, but we stood all in the middle of the circle, and so then there would be 4 people assigned, and we would try to get 2 people to go to the left, 2 people to go to the right, and then maybe if the tank gets them, then we put the tanks in the middle, and everybody sort of moves out to the side. So it was sort of like the arrows felt that there was enough time where, like, let's say 3 people went to one side and one went to the other side, that one person could react and run over quickly as long as they were positioned well enough. So
Yes.
again, on heroic, it felt like, okay, this was a really fun fight and it was solvable just by using your brains and communicating. But as Squishy mentioned, as this fight gets really hard, is this just going to be a matter of there's 8 world markers on the screen and it's just constantly telling you, okay, go to triangle, go to circle, go to square. So I really hope that they keep the simplicity of this fight where it's kind of like it's so one thing that I didn't like about it is, so when it comes to the Tetris, right, you can't really see the walls. Like I'm watching on your screen, you're kind
Yeah.
of like you keep panning back to look, but it's really, really inconvenient if you're doing anything, right? Whether you're a healer, whether you're a tank, it's really hard to see the walls behind you. So it's not really Tetris in a matter of like, oh, let me look to see where's a good spot to place my wall. It's just machine gunning things so fast at you that you sort of have to just like have a plan for it beforehand. So while it was fun to come up with the plan of the boss, it did, it does really feel like it's going to be a weak or a thing where it's just going to be like far left, close left, far right, like, and then it tells you middle, okay, get out of middle. And like, yeah, the other thing about this boss is it had a very low amount of health and it died really, 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 really fast.
Yeah,
But I
they
was told that the aim of the fight on Mythic was 6 to 8 minutes, and it wasn't meant to be like a blitz sort of fight.
interesting. Cuz yeah, heroic testing definitely had like no health, but the normal did. Like it was
Oh,
definitely a
really?
longer it was definitely a slightly longer fight on normal, but or for the item level that it was, we'll probably blow through it on myth on live, but it's I think it is a very cool boss to do without weak auras. I think it is a boring boss with if weak auras becomes the norm, which I do think it is, because like why would you not just assign it out? I mean, I think it's easy enough to do on normal and like heroic, where the strategy is literally just like you said, sit in one lane and the waves go anywhere else but that lane, right?
Yep.
Like, and you can like it's really easy if you pile up 5 in one lane for whatever reason, you just send 5 breakers to that lane and you'll break all 5 walls. So like It's I like the theme of the fight. It's almost like choose how you want to do it, but there's almost not going to be enough variation, I feel like, unless Mythic changes that. Right? Like it's always just going to be like, okay, build up in the 4 left ones all the time, and then we'll send the breakers to those assigned left ones. Like, there isn't like a random wall that shows up that's going to change up your strategy. It's just going to be the same thing every pull, you know?
Yeah, that was where I was going a little bit with the it's hard to see because I think both of us came to the same conclusion that chances are like that might be what they do, right? Is they have it so there's random walls or basically they don't allow you to just do that strategy of okay, sit in a safe lane and then everyone goes out and fans out like you sort of have to think about where to place your walls. So while I hope that that's the case, it's also I think visibility to me was the biggest problem with this fight, especially when you were targeted. Like there was a big notice of if you had your game sounds on, it does the da-na-na when you're targeted, and you can
Yeah.
kind of tell. But if you didn't, the animation wasn't very good at showing you that you were targeted. I think this fight kind of needs maybe some sort of like custom animation or different one. Like think of like the on what was the fourth boss that jumps around in the first raid? Starts with an S, I
Oh,
think. The guy that
Rationan?
flies around.
Rationan.
Yeah, yeah. You know when you got the webs and it kind of showed you not just it had that line and then it showed behind you. I feel like that would have been a better animation for this boss of like you could see the entire pie slice that you're taking out when you're targeted.
Oh, I
That way
see
it's
what
a
you
little
mean.
more, yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that
Yeah.
when you're targeted, not only is it a little more obvious for you, but also like you know which pie slice that you're in because sometimes, especially if you're a melee and you're really close to the boss, it might not be totally obvious like which one you're hitting.
Yeah, I think also like you said, panning your camera constantly backwards is an issue without weak auras. But if we go into a weak aura strategy, like you're gonna know where everything is because you're just placing it, right? But I think
Oh,
for normal heroic, I think the fight is really fun. I think maybe they could add like a small counter at the front of each lane that tells you how many walls are in the back without like without ruining
oh
the
yeah,
avenue of the
yeah,
fight. Just like maybe even just like tally marks like in the glowing floor or something like that that tells you how many are there. Nothing
yeah.
that's like
I,
gonna
I
completely immersion breaking, but something to
Yeah,
help with
maybe
that.
like well, maybe like a little marker at the front of each pie slice, just like you said, like a little Roman numeral or like like slashes or something.
Yeah.
Because then also you could use that to determine which pie slice you're into, right? You would know, okay, like which I'm in this one, or let me move over 1 inch to be in the next one. So yeah, I think this is a cool fight. I think it maybe needs some sort of custom visuals to help it along. But what I will say though, I hope they don't make it really difficult because one of the big feedbacks, we talked about add-ons being removed, and one of the most common feedback or something people were saying is, well, how about you make the fights better first and then remove the add-ons once you can show us you can make these good fights. And I think this would be a perfect example of, if this boss ends up being only a 30 or 40 pull boss because it gets solved by weak auras, but it's still a really fun boss to do for the first time in heroic or whatever, I would consider that right on that path, and that's kind of a W of like, this is a proof that okay, they can make a cool boss as long as weak auras are gone, and then once weak auras are gone, this becomes a much more fun boss.
Yeah. Now, I will say there's something really interesting, which it appears that the boss has like a soft enrage around like 2.5 minutes for heroic and 3.5 minutes for normal. Which is that the order that it normally does is waves, tank, waves, break. But for some reason around those markers, he starts casting 3 sets of waves
Huh.
per cycle, meaning you're like building the walls faster and you don't get enough breaks. So like
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
because it does start off pretty slow, right? Like it gives you enough time to kind of lean into the mechanics, which I kind of like. Like this is how you make the walls. This is how you break the walls. And then like halfway through the fight, I assume what is supposed to be halfway through the fight, it goes, now let's ramp things up a bit. Let's speed things up, you know? And I think that's kind of cool from like both a learning perspective, but also a design perspective. You mastered
Yeah, I
it.
like that.
Now let's go.
Yeah,
So
I like that. I think that the one thing I think, at least from what we saw in heroic, is the damage from the dots is still pretty crazy, and I worry that if they ramp up the walls too fast, it would just be like I don't know. I guess too hard of a healer fight might be something stupid to say, but Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that the dot damage is really crazy. So if they do ramp up the amount of walls that they're shooting out, which is in turn ramping up the amount of dots, that's going to turn into a really really hectic healer fight by the end.
Yeah. So on Mythic, the Mythic mechanic is a new type of wall that whenever you break it, you get a what is essentially a bursting stack. It's like
Oh,
an
I
8 second
see.
long bursting stack. So like I don't know if that's gonna change how you're gonna break the walls, but like maybe it's like you can't break too many of those at the same time, or you can't extend. Like I don't know. Maybe it might change where it's like, if you do, if the breaks are like 5 seconds apart, you don't want to roll the first wall into the second wall type thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens when that's tested. I think next week, because I think they're off this week.
Yep.
All right. I think this is the boss that
Lastly,
everybody talked about.
yeah,
Yeah.
this was, jeez. I think we may have. Well, I don't know. I guess this is definitely your favorite boss, so you can maybe explain a little bit.
Um, I think it's my favorite visual boss. I don't know about mechanically, but like you start
Okay,
off
okay.
and there's fucking like ghostly void dragons that are like preventing you from leaving the arena. I think that's so cool off the start. And then you have basically what is like Denathrius, where you have like 3 stacks, and you need to by the end of the phase, have cleared your stacks, and you do that by standing in like this tank soak that's on stream right now. Um, if you push him fast enough, it doesn't matter, which is what everybody did because he didn't have enough health. But like the one thing that I think that is consistent across this entire raid so far is the visuals are pretty fucking good. Right? Like everything is pretty clear as to what you're supposed to do, and I think that's awesome. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think so the first vibes, like my impression of this boss was I got major end boss vibes from this. Like this was
Yeah.
like very epic. It was very crazily put together. It was a multi-phase encounter where you're moving from platform to platform. Like to me this seemed even more wild than Tindral. Um Obviously weird things made Tindral difficult that hopefully won't make this boss difficult, but um right away it started off with a very interesting um tank mechanic where it was essentially like alternating raid soaks on top of frontals that you
Yep.
didn't want to hit anybody with. And so the tanks basically had to coordinate like, the as a tank you basically couldn't take the same hit twice unless you had like a ton of defense up. And also certain ones had to be away from the raid, certain ones had to be on the raid. This is going to be really 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 tough for tanks I think on Mythic. Like I already basically on raid testing we had two very very good tanks playing. Neither of our it was like it was. I think Porcy, the brewmaster guy who's like doing 21s on EU, that like crazy tank, and then Drogo who has been tanking MDI this season, and like they were struggling. Like they were just like, what the fuck is this? This is
Yeah,
really
so
really hard.
people find out how it works, by the way. So I'm gonna just go back here. So the
Oh
way it
shit.
works
Okay.
is there are so like Growl said, there's two sets of soaks that you need to soak in the group, and two breaths that need to not hit the group, and each tank has to take one. They set up the order so that no matter what you do, if you taunt on every cast, the correct ones will go to the correct tanks. So like you see here, there's a
Oh
group soak. The other tank will immediately taunt. No matter what it is, he will deal with it. So in this case, it's a cone, so he'll point it away. The other tank taunts. It will always be a cone in this place, and then the other tank taunts and puts it on the group. So they set it up in a way that the tank just taunts on every cast, and just has to figure out and react what to do with it. So it's a very different type of like tank combo.
yes. Okay, that makes so much more sense because our tanks were very confused because once the mechanic was on you, you couldn't taunt it off, right?
Correct.
Like it wasn't. So we were trying to figure out how we could possibly be reacting to the combo, and that's sort of what we eventually came up with was the idea that we just taunt back and forth. But I think we didn't quite pick that up or realize that. We just sort of maybe thought we were getting
Yeah.
lucky or whatever. But yeah,
They removed the orders where that would not work, so that's assumingly how they would do it. But this boss has some like really awesome mechanics. Like this one here, once you push him to 50%, he like throws his hammer to like Avengers shield between everyone. Kind of cool. But then you have the dimension breath, which on screen you'll see here, and I'll pause it really shortly. But basically, you'll see basically the dragon will breathe forwards, And we'll also go through all the portals that were just placed on the map. So you can see that the portal that I just placed there has an arrow coming out of it, and the other portals also have an arrow coming out of it. So there's just going to be a big breath across the entire screen and from all the portals here, which just looks so cool.
Yeah, it's really, really ridiculous because you have these breaths going everywhere, and I believe the way it worked right was it was especially important for the tanks for everything to be set up well because there was like it did damage to the raid based off of how much damage the tank took, right? It was like had something to do with that during this part too.
No, it's the opposite. So every person that takes damage from the breath deals damage to the tank as well.
Oh.
I think that's how it works. I could be wrong on that.
Our raid, we were blowing up on this part. Our whole raid was exploding here. Okay. I think it might have been like the damage that some people take, everybody take or whatever. It may have been not tank related, but we were definitely just blowing up after this part.
Let's see here. Dimension breath. On Heroic difficulty, Dimension Glare is applied to the primary target. The target's existence unravels after 2 seconds, inflicting cosmic damage proportional to the damage taken from Dimension Breath to all players.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the tank just takes more damage based on how many people got hit by the breath, is my understanding of that.
No, I think the breath hits the tank and then it does damage to all players. Okay, well, anyway, either way, this is PTR. We don't need to go into the differences in the mechanics. So, basically, honestly, all parts of the phase 1 felt pretty engaging. It was cool how basically you have the tank combo, and it's all it is the tank combo, and then it starts creating these like Squishy mentioned. There's these void dragons on the side of the room that start like slashing players, and it creates this like claw line where you have to make sure you don't get hit by anyone else's line, and it creates some area denial. Then eventually some tornadoes happen where they're kind of whizzing past, so it's not as simple as just okay, everyone stack here. It's okay, there's a tornado coming through our raid, again, very similar to Tyndril, and everyone having to like, scooch over for it. And then there's the beams, and then eventually you go into this like this phase 2
you split
like
the
go
raid
through portal thing, right? Yeah.
I mean,
we didn't get much farther than this on Heroic. Like we limped into this phase and then didn't get much further than that, basically.
Yeah, so it's just a big like AoE phase. All the ads are nice, like are almost all melee, so they just kind of group up. And really the only mechanic is you just AoE them down, and then the main guy, if you kill him too slow, he casts like a slowly rotating lasers. And that's basically the phase. Then you just come back. This phase feels weird. It feels kind of out of place almost. Maybe it'll make more sense on like mythic difficulty, but otherwise, like, it's whatever, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is something that nobody really mentions, but I think Blizzard does, is they sometimes create phases in these really hard bosses that are meant to be breaks and meant to be not difficult. Just to, because like, okay, that first phase was like, we're talking about soaks and tank orders and beams and claws and like, there's a lot of stuff going on in that first phase. And it's like, I feel like that's like, it's going to take guilds a lot of time to get through that. And then, yeah, you're sort of like, okay, they're almost like throwing you a little bit of bone here where it's like, okay, this is an easier part. Like, this is where you can just kind of like chill. You can make it feel like you're getting further in the fight. On a really long fight, it does feel like a little bit of a drag, when there's like a 9-minute fight and then 2 minutes is this intermission thing. But yeah, this is kind of just like a gimme freebie intermission, kind of like blow up some ads, get your cooldowns back or whatever. Again, it could be really hard on Mythic. I'm worried that this boss is going to get really hard on Mythic. I'm not sure what you think, but whenever the second boss looks like terrifying is usually when I'm like, oh, this might not be a me kind of a tier.
Yeah, so like, I don't know. I like to finish off the fight, then you have this like AoE pulsing damage thing where you have 30 seconds to do as much damage to the dragon as you can, and any damage that like is remaining or any life left after, the boss heals that amount. But the dragon takes double damage. So that's like where you definitely want your cooldowns, which I think is kind of interesting because that's like your only damage amp on this encounter. If you kill it, he doesn't heal at all, which is fantastic. But then you go to the last phase, and normal isn't as cool, but it's still generally cool, which is 3 people get these, like, I don't know, novas, and the Kaiveza portals are back. So like you
Oh
get to
boy.
place where these Kaveza portals are. You can see there, like we dropped them off and we all got sucked towards them. And then they start emitting rings where you have to dodge. On normal, there's only 3. I don't know where the third one is on this poll because we've screwed it up somehow. But on heroic, there are 6.
Oh boy.
And they rotate around the room. So you have to dodge
Oh.
6 sets of rings, and you have to place them like around the room to make sure you don't get sucked and pulled into them. They're very much like Kaveza portals. And then
Well, so
go ahead.
well, real quick, just to give a picture of it.
Oh yeah, go for
So
it.
essentially, they're Kai'Veza portals, but think of the rings on Silken Court in the second intermission, where there's the
Yes.
spikes, where it creates it's like a small circle, then there's spikes, then it enlarges, and then it keeps getting bigger, and the spikes. So you kind of have to like wait for one circle to go and then run past it. That's sort of how the fight looks if you can't see it. So basically, it's like imagine there's Kai'Veza portals, but instead of them doing that, you know, the weird stuff where you're doing it with the ads, it's essentially like creating these lines of circles that you're having to dodge while you're moving around the room fighting the boss.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. I like it's really cool looking. It's kind of like Painsmith as well, if you remember that, how the spikes slowly go outwards from a point, basically.
Yep.
But yeah, like this phase on all difficulties looks relatively straightforward. You place the portals, and then the boss will mark 3 people with something called Star Killer Swing, and they have to aim basically a missile into those portals that you placed. You can see that coming up here. Basically, you just have to aim it into it. And
Oh yeah, so I was just saying that there's not like the Kai'Veza stuff, but it literally is.
It literally
Yeah.
is.
So you get targeted. It's the exact same animation as Kai'Veza, where there's a thing that kind of appears. It shows you all the lines. It for your specific line, it's red. That's how you know that it's you. And then you have to, I'm guessing, destroy all of them every single time when that happens. And then
Yep.
it gives you another set of them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's basically it. So you get 3. This time we actually got 3. You know, you'd see the rings are going out, and then the hard part here is the 3 people that get the swing are gonna have to go to 3 different ones. If you line up at the same one, you miss. And on heroic difficulty, if you miss any of them, your raid blows up. So like it's really punishing if you screwed up. On normal you can live, but it's really punishing on heroic if you miss. And I think on this pull here we miss one, but we just don't blow up because it's normal.
Yeah.
But that
Interesting. Yeah.
is a private aura.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that was coming immediately when you said that, because otherwise you would just like assign them or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be a really good idea to have like a really soft spread around the room. That way you can kind of like, you know, because that's the way you generally handle those mechanics, is like whoever's closest deals with that one. So you kind of have it so like, you know, everyone's spread a little bit, so it's more clear where everybody's going, and you don't have to
Yeah.
like move as far.
On heroic, those things are moving, so you have to like line up correctly in front of it so it moves into you,
Oh
which is kind of
boy,
interesting. So
that's interesting.
yeah, like very cool boss, very very awesome. I'm big hype for this, although I feel like Mythic is going to destroy my will to play when one fucking of those missiles misses and the raid just blows up. But
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat with you. As I think the mechanics look cool. I think visually it looks really cool. It's probably going to be a damn fun fight on first week of doing it on heroic, and then when I get to that boss on mythic, it's going to be absolute pain.
I mean, for me, heroic has been so much fun. Like heroic Undermine was a fucking blast. I had so much fun. Then you get to mythic and it's like a nightmare. So like
Yeah, that's how I feel about a lot. Obviously, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be bosses that are, you know, 200 pull, 250 pull bosses, but for me, definitely like the sweet spot is like 50 pulls. Like any boss that you can kind of like learn throughout the night and then expect to kill it is like usually a very, very fun boss to me. Like I love end of heroic, like first week, like first couple bosses of mythic, the early weeks. Like that's totally my vibe. Like a lot of people identify me as like, oh, you're the M plus guy and you hate raiding. Like I love raiding. A lot of raid bosses is really fun. I just don't like when you get to the point where a boss is like 200 plus pulls.
yep. So I guess we can just talk about the earlier boss on normal since it shouldn't take long, and I think some of them are worth mentioning. So
Okay.
the first boss here, it's kind of like Mother from Old Year. Do you remember this? There's like multiple chambers that you're in.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right away, just looking
Yeah,
at it,
exactly. So
it looks like a purple version of Mother, where you're in this square room. The boss is really big. It's a robot, and then like you can see there's like these barriers, purple barriers, where you can go from room to room.
exactly. So the boss periodically removes one barrier and you have to transition to the next room. So he teleports away and it's like Fall Guys. If you could just imagine just a bunch of spinning lasers, like
Oh, it's like Fall Guys.
dude, like is it not? Like there's a bunch of spinning lasers, there's traps on the ground, like and then I don't know if you saw it there, but there is actually a wall that will just straight up kill you if you touch it. And the only way through it is to press your extra action button using the Reshi wrap, your cloak basically. So you just have to like
Yeah.
port through it, and then you just have to dodge the lasers and like and break the shield in the face. It's like nothing special, but it's like the first boss, and it's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I think first bosses. Maybe I'm a little biased because the first boss that I ever did in a raid was Talik, and the
Ooh,
way I always see these bosses is like an elevator boss, right? Like it's supposed to introduce you to the raid, and like you're sort of like entering it, right? And I do like bosses, first bosses that do this, that are like very dodge heavy, not super like tons of coordination required, and then just like it's you're entering into the raid where like after you kill the boss, like okay, now I feel like I'm in the depths of it, so definitely, at least from what I've seen so far, like obviously a first boss can only be so cool, but it definitely looks like they're on the right track there.
yeah. Um, so next up we have the third boss because you can do second or third in any order. This boss is kind of like a choose your own adventure boss. It's like what is it, Lyhuvum in Sepulcher. Um, I guess a little bit of Bandit, but basically there's just a bunch of ads in these cages, and you can't kill them until you aim these lines at the cages, and then it breaks the cage open, and then you can kill them. You basically get like a certain amount of time to choose which ads you want to break and kill before they spawn, and then you have to deal with them properly. So I think there's like a mage that you have to kick. There's like one that just kind of pulses unavoidable AoE, and then there's like an assassin that like dots people in the raid and teleports behind them. So like it's I think we're gonna figure out what order Liquid chooses and probably do that one. But for like normal and heroic, you kind of just choose whatever and just deal with the rest. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I don't really like these. I know all the world first raiders are gonna hate me, but I don't really like these sort of like choose your own adventure bosses because it's really just choose whether or not you do Liquid or Echo's adventure. If even if they're different. But I do like your point of like, well, if you're just pugging in like a normal or heroic, a lot of times it's just whatever breaks, and they're all just a little bit different, and you don't really need a scripted sort of thing, and I don't really mind that, I guess. That's kind of fine. It doesn't look like it's they're like that super impactful or whatever. Like you're kind of killing them pretty quick or whatever.
Yeah,
There's
Mythic.
what
Yeah,
Yeah,
once
on
they
Mythic
break, they're
it's gonna
really
be
easy. But if
yeah,
they
on Mythic it's
spawn,
gonna be just copy whatever Liquid does for sure.
yeah, like on normal, you can kill every ad before it spawns. So this is like a single target boss. But like on heroic, I assume you're gonna have to leave some up. Mythic, you're definitely gonna have to leave some up. And the ads like on Mythic get empowered the longer they're alive. Like I think every time you kick the volley ad, the cast gets faster or something like that. So there are like different things that like it's very much pick Liquid or Echo Strat and you'll do it from there.
Yeah, it still looks okay. I mean, it fit the theme of the raid and it's whatever. I think they can't have every boss be a banger.
Yep. Then the last one, this one was like not my favorite. It's like a giant spider, and basically, phase one lasts till 50%. Some people get these tethers, and you have to run away from the boss to the edge of the room to break the tether, and you'll drop poop on the ground, which kind of matters later, because you can see. I'll just get forward here. You can see that like occasionally it'll summon like an Aranog ring around the room, and then you have to kill one of them to break it basically. And
Oh
then you can
yeah, yeah.
escape.
So this is very similar to the first boss in what was that raid called?
Yeah,
Aeronog's
Aranog
raid?
in Vault. Yeah.
In Vault of the Incarnates, yeah. Basically, like, yeah, it creates a ring of ads, and you have to kill one of the ads to like break out of the ring, and then you can kill the boss or whatever. Yeah, this is literally the exact same thing.
Exactly. The interesting thing though is the things on heroic and mythic are immune until the tank hits them with their frontal. So it causes some weird positioning issues because you need to hit one of them that the tank is aiming at, but you also don't want to be in the frontal. So it's like an interesting like dilemma that you need to solve.
I see.
But then the last mechanic this boss does is this giant circle, which you need to run out. It one shots even on normal. And the problem is, because you dropped all the poop at the edge from earlier, you have to go to like a different spot of the room. So this fight very much seems like aerial denial, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. So imagine like, a big circle and you're fighting the boss in the circle, but when it does this AoE, you have to be on the very edge of it. So like the area denial is like on the edge of the room, right? Like you're
Yeah,
like
exactly.
dropping these, like you can't just drop anywhere on the edge. Like you're sort of like everyone drops on sort of this portion. You're like moving radially around the circle.
Yeah. And
Um,
then you hit 50%
for example.
and it becomes just basically a kill before you run out of room, like a completely run out of room, because there is growing like puddles on the ground that periodically get dropped, and then a frontal that you have to soak. And you just slowly kite the boss around the room because more crap gets dropped on the ground, and that's it. Like, not much to it. Thematically pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I think everything I've seen from this raid though, like I think I like a lot. While these bosses I just see as like very, very formulaic, right? Like this is all very, very standard in terms of their progression through the raid. The first boss, very easy, you just dodge some stuff, right? You kind of just, do the motions. Then they sort of have these like simple bosses where there's not really these crazy overlaps and you kind of just have to like get the basic idea of them. And then, as you get into the raid, then you get Nexus Queen or whatever, and then it's like 50 mechanics and shadow dragons flying around killing you.
I mean, I don't.
Nothing about these bosses is inherently bad. It's just like, they're relatively simple, especially because you're doing them on normal.
Yeah. So like, what do you feel about? Did you do the trash? I don't know if it was in her the heroic
No.
one.
No, it was not in for heroic testing.
Dude, there is so much trash in this raid.
I hate trash. Honestly, here's the thing about trash, and this is like maybe a dumb take. Okay, when I played classic hardcore and your character dies when your character dies, it gets deleted. Okay, a raid felt like a raid, right? Like you care about the trash packs and you respect them and like they're a part of the raid. In retail, it just feels like they have absolutely no place. I mean, I just don't understand. Like, I don't know. And also the frustrating thing is like everyone's AFK on the trash too. Like is that what it's supposed to be? Like is raid trash really supposed to be like, okay, well the 7 people that need to go AFK, and then Growl just has to fucking sit there and heal and clear the trash? Like I just don't really understand it. Like I don't even mind if they have like a big old raid where you just walk from boss to boss and it takes a while. Like I'm not asking for like a boss rush or whatever, but like I don't know, it's just annoying. I don't I just hate raid trash. I don't know. I don't really get it. I don't understand it. Like
Dude,
I don't know what purpose it serves. Like it literally is like quote unquote there as a break, but like bro, I'm not taking a break. Like I still have to sit here and heal. Like I get that you're AFK or you're like tabbed out like watching anime, like mashing your one button rotation or whatever but like I don't know, it just doesn't it's not a break. Like and a lot of trash packs are like really, really annoying too, where like if you pull too many of a certain mob or like you don't do certain things, you just like everyone
dude,
dies or takes a bunch of damage. Like I don't know. I
it's
hate raid trash.
it's one thing if trash is like group up a decent chunk and just AoE it down because it does fucking nothing, right? Like if that was trash in every raid, I don't think I would care that much because like you said, like it kind of actually is a break. But the problem is like this trash sucks. There's a lot of damage on normal. Like there are things that burrow around. There's casters that need kicking and gripping, and some that are just like immobile. And then there's like, I think they learned from Undermine where everybody skipped all the trash. And I still think they haven't learned that no matter how much trash you make, people are just gonna try to skip it if it sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear like I feel like I'm one of the most sympathetic people when it comes to like trying to understand the game development point of view of it. Like I don't really consider myself as like I'm not going to understand the point of things. Like I try and look at what positivity different elements of the game bring, and I just don't understand raid trash. Like I genuinely think like it literally is put there so that the 7 people in my guild go AFK, and then I'm just sitting here having to deal with the raid trash. Like I just I don't know. I don't really get it. Like I guess like I can kind of see it maybe like when you're no, I'm not I don't understand it.
It's even worse this time because you need to like teleport through portals, and in order to unlock the portals, you need to kill specific trash mobs. So it's like they learned from Undermine where they were like, okay, we have to put things in where you have to kill in order to unlock it, otherwise people are just gonna skip everything. It's like
They
I'm
learned
annoyed.
what from Undermine? Undermine was a great raid. You don't need to do the trash. They learned what? What did they learn? Like, I
Their
don't know,
solution
man.
is always to add True Sight first, realize that doesn't work, and then they'll add doors. Doors that don't
Yeah,
open.
yeah. It just, dude, that one interview, the one M Plus interview, I'll always laugh about is like they made that comment about how well, it may feel like, oh, these things are impossible to do, but like at least we don't put doors. And then yeah, you do. You absolutely do put doors.
Dude, somebody in my raid last night, we were going to the third boss. The third boss. And he was like, do you think we got enough count yet? Like, as a joke. But that was how much trash we were fucking pulling. Or it felt like we were
Yeah.
pulling. So,
Yeah.
alright. I think that's the raid. That's a good summary.
Yeah, that was good. Random question. I might be like dumb here, but I was watching that spider boss and I was getting like really heavy like Makesna vibes from Nax, which is just like another spider boss. Um, have they ever done like a recreation of an old raid, but like a modern version of it? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm surely they have in the history, right? Where they like bring back a raid and they like modernize it. Because I feel like if not, that would go really hard. Like if they just like imagine if they they redid BWL, but they like actually made current raid boss things of what the boss. I feel like that would be really
Isn't that
cool.
what they did exactly with BWL?
I don't know.
Oh, you
I
didn't
don't
do
know.
you didn't do it. That's right.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm like, well, maybe I'm an idiot here.
No,
Like,
I'm pretty
did
sure they did
I
that
don't
with
know.
BW. They kept the
Because I
spirit
know
of the
they did
counters.
the BRD raid.
Oh,
Like I know
BRD.
they did
Sorry,
that.
sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So, but to clarify, BRD is a dungeon, right? So like they did a dungeon and then re-envisioned as a raid, but like I guess it is still very very similar. But I guess like I thought that would be like kind of cool. I guess one of the topics has been like, what sort of non-formulaic things is Blizzard gonna do, right? Like, okay, we know they're gonna come out with a new raid, they're gonna come out with new dungeons every season, like over the next expansion as well, like what sort of things. That would be really, really cool. Like, they did even if they did it like LFR style maybe where they only release like a certain amount of wings of bosses or whatever. Like I think it would be really cool to do like an old raid but like modern bosses. And maybe that would allow them to save development time because they're reusing assets or whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just being a classic idiot here.
No, so it's funny that you say that because I think they've been doing that for a while. They always find one mechanic and they're like, "Ooh, we like that mechanic," and then they'll use it for like the next year or like expansion set or until the end of time. Like the recent example is Blaze. Blaze happened on Farak, and Blaze has been in every tier
Yep.
since Farak.
Yep.
And it's just like, okay, we get it, you like that, and it's just like we had Soaks for a while. The team was Soak Garrus, as it was nicknamed for a while. Like they overused it there, and it's just I don't know what the next one will be, but they are clearly coming up with new stuff. But they're also reusing stuff from the like old tiers. Like I explained the spider boss is like the Aranog mechanic, right? Like
Yeah.
they're clearly reusing stuff, so maybe not like a boss in full, but they're definitely taking stuff from the end. Like the Demon Hunter boss, it has that thing where it like rips your tank's soul out and somebody has to collect it, right?
Yep.
That like I describe that to my guild as Illidan phase on Gul'dan.
Yeah, that's what our guild said too.
Yeah, it's
The
just
one
like
thing that's stuff that I always try and consider as like a content creator though is like everyone always bounces around, right? Like we're these nerds that have played every single raid that going back years, but a lot of people haven't even seen those
yep.
bosses. So I think people are a little bit like two things. Number one, I think people are a little bit too hard on when they bring back mechanics, but in general, like if a mechanic is cool, I don't really mind it. And number two, like I try my best not to explain things in terms of other bosses to people, but it's so hard when it's like, bro, this is literally just Aranog. Like this boss was just here last expansion, and it's the exact same mechanic. Like.
I think there's nothing wrong with bringing back a new like old mechanics because you can take unique mechanics, combine them in a completely different way, and it'll be a completely
Right.
new puzzle to solve, right? Like I think that is a really interesting way that they can not take existing design spaces and make something brand new out of them. I don't think they'd ever take a boss back and just redo the boss, because that would be
Right.
then you would actually get that complaint of like, this is just the same boss I did, even if it has new stuff.
Yeah,
But taking
exactly.
something from A, something from B, from C, combining them together, making some weird overlap, that could be cool.
Overall, I think I like the raid. I think that I actually liked the last two raids. The first raid of the tier felt like the end bosses were really really tough, and I didn't like that. But I pretty much liked the raid as a whole. I think Undermine was even better. Undermine is like probably one of my favorite raids. I think not to say it was like a super banger, but I think it was like I don't really have many complaints. I liked a lot of the bosses, and then
Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to this raid too. I think it looks really cool. I just worry that it's gonna be end of the expansion. Like when I saw the second boss, how like crazy they're going with it, I'm like, man, this is gonna be a really hard boss.
Yeah. All right. I think that's enough about the raid. Growl, you did the dungeon on Mythic Plus. How did you find that?
Yeah, that's a little bit of an understatement. So kind of funny. I mean, people are really like hungering to get this new content, and they finally released some stuff, and it's literally just this one dungeon, right?
Yep.
So there's only this one dungeon. So like everybody on my friends list has just been doing this one dungeon over and over and over and over again, and it's like, bro, I've done the dungeon 40 times. How are you guys waking up and trying to do the same dungeon again or whatever? I don't know. Maybe I feel like how raiders feel about M plusers, but so the boss or the dungeon is, what is it? Eco Dome
Yep.
something?
Eco Domo Donnie.
Aldani, okay. And right away, I would say overall, I'm very, very happy with the dungeon in terms of the way it's laid out. It's wide and open. It has sort of like the what was the last area of Shadowlands called? Does it start with a Z or something?
Uh, the last
The
area of
last
Shadowlands.
Not
Zereth
the last.
Mortis?
Zereth Mortis. There you go. Yeah, yeah. It has sort of a Zereth Mortis vibe where like it's not nearly as like voidy or dark. It's more like open, and there's like some snow and there's green and there's plants and stuff. So it's a little bit of a switch up from some of the other stuff. There is obviously some void inspiration in this dungeon, but another thing is they're very open with the dungeon. There's lots of different, like there's a very clear path with the way that you're supposed to go, but the trash packs felt like they're kind of like plop tier, like kind of interdispersed, and it feels really good in the way that you can kind of it's back to the choose your adventure Mythic Plus of like, if you really want to go through the dungeon and pull one pack at a time, that's fine, but like you can pull pack A with pack B and maybe pack C, or skip all of them and walk along the you don't really need to do these crazy skips or have like an advanced team or invis pot. You can kind of just like walk around packs as long as you're paying attention, and it really felt like they're doubling down with what I find at least fun in M plus of like deciding what route you do and what packs you pull. And yeah, I think overall the layout was like really really fun. I enjoyed this dungeon.
Yeah. How did you like this first boss? I've heard a lot of complaints about this one.
Yeah, so I think the biggest complaint about this first boss is going to be that it's tough on pugs. So it is a giant worm. The worm's in the middle of the room. It doesn't move. Mechanics are very, very simple. It spawns waves of ads. They're not really big waves. They're like two sets of three spiders. They jump around. Everything in this dungeon jumps around that we'll get to eventually. And then after some time, the boss starts sucking everything in. And if any of the ads get towards the boss essentially gets extra damage and heals a bunch. And so it's a mandatory switch off of the boss and kill the ads mechanic, which, as we know, certain people don't like to switch off of the boss. Certain classes aren't good at killing ads. And so it is very, very punishing if you're not able to kill the ads. And so there's a lot of worry in pugs of like, you know, do you have like if you don't have cooldowns and you just watch your teammate not switch off the boss and there's like nothing you can do to kill the ads. Luckily, the ads aren't super tanky. They're not like insanely difficult to kill, but as every Mythic Plus boss has gone down, people will avoid hitting ads as much as possible at all times unless they can just AoE cleave it with the boss. So I don't know. I think the boss is okay. I don't really mind it too much, but
Yeah.
I could see this being annoying in pugs.
All right. How was the trash?
So the first area, it's a lot of actually like reused mobs from earlier dungeons, or I guess this guy's even a raid guy. So there are these big destroyers that have similar mechanics to Hungering Devourer. Essentially, there's like a circle that gets placed on you that doesn't really do anything because it's not tuned very well in beta. There's a line that goes on you and it kind of like does a ton of damage, and you want to make sure you don't hit anybody with it. And for the most part, there's like not too much. There are these caster mites that use this gorge spell that you need to kick. And if you kick it, not only is it like a bolt that goes off that does damage, but it also puts a buff on the mob that blows up when it dies. I think that can be a little tough for people that aren't familiar with the mechanic because, like, you see the cast go off and you're like, okay, well, it did damage and it's fine. You don't realize that when the pack blows up, your whole party is gonna blow up when that ad dies too. But for the most part, the trash in the beginning is pretty reasonable. As you get towards the second, so there's basically, you know, three areas in between the three bosses, and later on, I don't know what it is, but every single mob just seems to jump. So there are these far stalkers, I think they're called, and they basically just jump around on everybody, which can be really, really tough because they jump right away when you pull them. And so if you're a DPS that's, you know, let's say you proc a spell and you hit a mob that the tank hasn't hit yet, that mob will literally just jump right on your head and start mailing you instantaneously, which is really, really tough. It's nice that they're desynced, so like it doesn't always happen, but yeah, it definitely can happen. On top of that, there are these lizards, these rune stalkers, and they do the exact same thing that the inspectors do in Floodgate, where they jump behind you and then put a thing on the ground that you have to dodge out of. But like this whole area just has all these mobs just jumping around, like jumping behind the tank, and it's just a little bit much. Like I think they're definitely experimenting with, again, how do we make mechanics that are fun to do or like challenging but at the same time aren't just swirlies, right? And that's kind of, I think, what they're going here is like every like a lot of these mobs are doing these like jump around and like lines and stuff, and I don't know, it's not terrible. Like obviously people will develop some good strategies for it, but especially if you're a class that needs mobs to be stacked up to do good damage, you're going to get really frustrated here. And B, if you're a tank that's maybe not so experienced and like mobs are jumping everywhere, like imagine if your DPS pops cooldowns on a mob and then it jumps away from you and they're just like hitting it and then you lose threat. Like I can see this being a little annoying. I know it sounds like I'm ranting a little bit here, but I overall I do like it. Like I think the pull size is good. Again, if you can see on the screen here, like everything's kind of spread out. There's just different mob packs in different places, and you can kind of just pull whatever you want. There's not an overly crazy density of casters. You know,
Yes.
there's not really pulls where you have to pull three casters at the same time. Like always, it's just like one or two. And most of the casters, you can just kind of like assign somebody to kick.
If I had
Yeah.
to
Oh,
pick between casters and mobs that teleport and lunge forward, I would pick the mobs that lunge forward 100% of the time.
yes, that's a very good point, right? And that's sort of what I was mentioning with the whole like that's where Blizzard's kind of going here is that they're experimenting with like, okay, well, you guys don't want to do AoE stops and like really, really tough kicks. What other stuff can we do to challenge you, you know? And that's kind of where they're going here with this area, I think.
Yeah. Then you have the second boss. I know I talked about this one. Like it seemed relatively simple. On an M0. How is it in like in Mythic Plus?
So basically, a couple of the mechanics. It'll target two players with these javelins. It's similar to the raid boss Agira, if you remember that, where you want to place them near the boss. You get pinned to the javelin, and then you have to kill it in order to break free. The javelins deal this ramping damage, and so that actually gets to be pretty heavy damage. Like this boss ends up being a very, very heavy, spiky damage boss in higher keys. Um, so you're basically dropping these javelins, you're killing them, and then you're getting these
Oh
lines
no.
through your character. I feel like the lines on this boss overall are probably some of the weakest visuals that they've made in dungeons so far. They're really, really tough if you want to go back to kind of show them. Like you can see the lines,
Yeah,
but
these
it's
ones.
like there's so much going on to like understand which one is like you
There's
can
so
kind of
much
tell if you really.
pink.
Yes, there's just so much pink everywhere, and again, like from a spectator, you could look and you can see, but this is like 5 seconds before a burn phase, and you're like, doing your cooldowns and ramping and stuff, and there's just a lot going on in this part. So after that, like I mentioned, so you get targeted by these lines. Eventually, the boss puts a shield on itself. Actually, kind of annoying that you can't deal any damage. So as a DPS, you're kind of just like standing there doing nothing when the shield is up. I didn't really like that. Especially if you're a class that does like flat damage. It actually has a shield for like if you're a class that does flat damage, it doesn't do really spiky CD damage, then you will hate this boss just because like he goes invulnerable so much, and he also has like a burn phase. But yeah, then eventually you have to put the lines through the boss. There's 6 total that you have to, and then you break the shield. It has like a very weird burn phase where the boss gets stunned and then it like gets dismounted. So there's like 2 targets. It doesn't take extra damage or anything, I think. It just literally is 2 targets instead
Yes.
of 1, which again, most classes benefit from that. So like it is a damage amp, but it's a very very interesting one, right? Like depending on what, like it's something that you really really have to think about, I think, where most damage amps are like, oh well, it's taking 300% increased damage, so like duh, you save your cooldowns for that. Doing anything other than that is a big mistake, right? But how much damage do you really gain from going from 1 target to 2 target? Like is that worth losing a touch? Is it worth losing a surge? Like these are some interesting questions that you don't always really think about, or maybe I don't because I'm not a good DPS yet. But either way, I thought this is an interesting boss, and I like the way it played out. I just think that visually it was a little bit tough during that shield break part, where it's like actually very very important to make sure, like you can see that we're having so many deaths here of like people getting double hit by lions, and like yeah, it's a very important part that I think is like very tough visually.
Yeah. I like I think it's simple, but yeah, I don't like the AFK phase where you're just sitting around doing nothing. Like I feel like something else
Yeah.
should be happening there. It's very odd. But you know what? Maybe that's what it like maybe that's how they give you enough time. Because we talked about like what they call affordance of like time to complete the mechanic correctly. And if you don't have to worry about your rotation at all during that time, then they can give you less time to complete it because you're completely focused on the mechanic itself. Does that kind of make sense? Like, is that
Yeah.
is that
It
fun?
do-
It could be.
yeah, no. Yeah, that's the problem,
No, no,
right?
no,
It's
no.
like
If it was not just put a line through the boss, I think if it was like a more complex puzzle, like let's say hypothetically, and like there were 2 colors of lines or something, like one red, one green, and like every party member got one. You have to aim the green ones on the boss and the red ones off the boss, or something like that. That could be a more interesting puzzle that requires you to stop DPS because it allows you to think properly. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, to be fair, even the current iteration of it, like if you're doing it at a challenging key level, you really do want to be like paying attention to your teammates and like making sure you don't get hit by another line, and like being ready and like knowing what movement you have. And it is like I would consider it still a reasonably challenging puzzle if you're doing it at a high key. So yeah, I don't
okay,
know. I don't hate it. It just feels like I don't know. I just worry too about certain classes and like class balance, right? You have a class like Arcane Mage, which is very good, and it's partially because of the way that some of these bosses are designed, where you can like you get so much benefit from a burn that happens every 45 seconds, and you don't do as much consistent DPS, whereas you have other classes that do more consistent damage, and it's like
yeah.
very very hard to compete, whereas there's not that many bosses that really benefit that kind of a class.
The interesting thing is the burn phase is 15 seconds. Your touch is 12. And I'm pretty sure unless you surge before the shield breaks, you're not putting your touch up in time.
Yeah, so this is something that I noticed you asked in my stream when I was
Yes.
playing this. That so there's a very, very weird mechanic with the way the boss dismounts. So essentially, you're the boss dismounts and you're fighting the guy who's on the mount, right? And that's the guy who shields. But the normal phase, you're fighting the mount, not the guy on the mount. So the guy jumps down, and so when the burn starts, it's only the guy, right? So theoretically, you would be surging the guy or pressing buttons on the guy, right? But then the guy goes away, like he becomes invulnerable. So like if you have touch on that guy or like any sort of dots or debuffs, I'm pretty sure they just go away and get cleared at the end of the burn phase. So it's like as soon as the guy is like as soon as he dismounts, you have to switch off and start hitting the mount and not him. even though he's being dismounted. I don't know. It was like really, really weird and like not intuitive. Because like normally, like okay, let's say there's a guy and you're breaking his shield, and then there's a burn phase. You want to just be like building up on that guy and hitting him, but you can't necessarily do that because the guy goes invulnerable and he goes away as soon as the burn phase ends. So like what happened, what Squishy sort of mentioned is like I did a combo on the guy, but because my touch didn't like okay, it's one thing if your touch doesn't land in the burn phase and you're like, oh no, it didn't hit the burn phase, but I'm pretty sure my touch literally went away. Like the guy just jumped on the mount with my touch
Yeah.
and didn't even get hit by it, and it was like that's sort of what I meant. Was like that was really, really weird. Like it's one thing if you don't get your spell in the burn phase, but to have your dots and spells and stuff literally go away when the boss jumps was like really weird.
Hmm. And then you have the last boss, which I know I was like, pugs are going to get destroyed by this boss. How did you end up finding it on Mythic Plus?
So I had the pleasure of listening to you explain the boss before I did it, so I knew what was happening. But I do feel like it's not very intuitive if you
I
don't
see
know
your
what's
entire
happening.
group getting owned by the
Yes,
dot, and you
yes,
you
is
picked up
this
your clone.
yeah, so yeah, this is the very first time I did the boss. And so just to let them learn, right? I didn't say anything. I just let them do the boss. So I know what's happening, but they don't. And yeah, you can see my entire party. Their health bars are just bleeding out. My healer is losing his mind. Like what is happening with this boss? But yeah, so the way this boss works, if you didn't listen to last episode, was the boss mechanically is very, very simple. It just has like some lines and a couple circles and some frontals. But the thing is, it creates these clones of you throughout the room, not very often, but sometimes. And you need to protect your clone from getting hit by the mechanics. It's not just you. And so you basically have to think about like, okay, well, when do I? Sorry. The last important part is that when you pick up your clone, you get a damage buff. So there's this trade-off of okay, well, I want to pick up the damage buff when I want to pick it up, right? You don't just want to pick it up instantly, but you may need to protect your clone from getting hit. And so it's this constant game of like thinking about when to pick up your damage buff, thinking about when to use your cooldowns, like, protecting your guy or whatever. Also, the boss does pretty hefty amounts of damage. Like we're doing it on a 12 here, and so it doesn't feel like that much. But once you start doing this on a key that matters, like not getting your clone or like this boss is already a tough healing check, even if you're doing all the mechanics perfectly. Like I don't think like letting your clone die is basically a wipe, I think, on any
Yeah.
reasonable key.
The one thing I'll say is I don't think it's very clear what causes the damage on this. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like your party, like I'm pretty sure your warlock here has not picked up a single clone yet. That is just being healed
Yes.
through every single stack.
Yeah, so I didn't tell them anything about this boss, right? And yeah, he went through this whole boss without even knowing what was happening. Like he just thought it was like a dot or whatever, like a hard healer boss. Because there is some periodic damage and some random damage that's going out too. I think eventually now you see pings going out and stuff. I think now our team is starting to understand and explain it and figure it out and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
you see they're just like throwing pain stuff on him and stuff and like yeah. But I again I do really like again, maybe as a DPS, eventually I'll like some of this stuff less. But for me, this was like actually, I thought it would be way too much movement and I would be annoyed by this boss. But I actually thought it was pretty fun, like thinking about when to pick up my ghosts and like trying, can I milk them there? Can I? I think one problem is that I think this is going to be a weak aura boss where you're going to use a weak aura to tell you when the clone goes away so that you know the exact last second. And I wonder if there can be any sort of chaining of like keeping your damage buff and extending it from phase to phase because it does stack as well. It doesn't seem like that was intended, but I think people are definitely going to try and do that if you can leave your ghost up.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with this boss is actually going to be in low keys when um when healers are just going to be forced to heal through the dot. Like basically what your warlock just did because they don't understand where the damage is coming from and just assuming it's natural. And the healer just being forced to heal through it, then they'll go one heal question mark, right? Like as DPS do, and then just die. Like it almost feels like there needs to be a punishment that isn't a dot from that. Something that makes you feel like you fucked up.
I
Like
think you
like a
lose
haste
haste
dungeon.
too.
Do you
I
lose
think
haste?
it's both. I think it's both. I'm not 100% sure. But I think there might be both. But
Okay.
either way, it should be way more, it should be like, oh, it should feel way worse as the player, not as the healer. Like I
Exactly.
definitely agree with that. I think that's one of the biggest problems in their design mindset right now in terms of like, I understand that not every mechanic is going to be doable or reasonable and like a plus, 22 or whatever. And like, that's part of my own undertaking is trying to be a high end plus player. But I think sometimes like the healer in like a 12 key ends up being the janitor, and it ends up being like, well, yeah, you don't need to
Yes,
kick all these spells. It's like, well, yeah, you don't need to kick all the spells, but it's because your healer is like freaking out, and then like obviously your healer isn't that good too because they're doing 12s, and it's like, is it their fault? Is it, you have two casts go off during a big AoE, and it's like, yeah, if your healer was insane and people use defensives and all this stuff, but it's like, it's still, just because the casts and the mechanics don't kill you in lower keys doesn't mean there isn't a problem there, or that there isn't some pain felt by the groups of, especially like when we talk about healers and tanks. I mean, I think we need to consider doing more to keep those players playing, right? Like the world needs more healers and more tanks. Like
I agree.
anything that makes their life shittier is like, obviously we all love DPS.
I
Jang says screw healers, but
I think one of the things that I would do personally is like instead of a haste reduction, maybe make it like a silence. Not like the caster silence, but like the you can't use like a pacify, I guess is the word I'm looking for, where you just
yeah.
can't press buttons. Like, and make it not that punishing if you fuck up once, right? Like everybody's gonna fuck up, miss a clone or whatever. 2 seconds. You screwed up. But if you like maybe like every time you fuck up during the fight, it adds 2 more seconds, kind of thing. So like it really ramps up if you fuck it up. And that way it's not actually on the healer to do, and it's very much like you are at risk of just like not timing it. Because the one thing that I think DPS know is when they can't fucking attack, right?
Oh
So
yeah, dude, that's the worst, bro. In Priory, when the mini boss does the shout and I jump and I use a spell and I get silenced, bro, there is nothing more painful. I would rather just be dead. I would rather the shout just kill my character than to have to stand there in my cooldowns and just not be able to press any buttons. Like that's a fate worse than death. So yeah, I agree.
yeah,
I
like
think
I think
I,
that's
I like
better.
that they're doing it, but I agree with you that I want them to experiment more with that.
Like I don't even think it needs like I don't even know that it needs to have damage. If the clone gets hit, silence. 2 seconds for for each clone that has hit you in the past.
It's hard. I'm being annoying playing devil's advocate to my own point, but it is also nice as a healer to be able to save people from
Sure.
stuff. Like, there is that give and take of, well, you know, imagine being that healer and having that complete monkey warlock who is my friend in that key, and they're completely failing, but like you're completely carrying them, right? You're like pains up and using cooldowns, and like if it is kind of nice as a healer also to be able to like save your buds or to do that. So I think they
That's
need
fair.
to, but our point isn't that they should take away all damage or never, our point is that they should do more damage down sort of things, especially with it makes it hard on the boss, right? Like, how do you balance a boss like that where, a lot of times people will comment this on my stream of, oh, I'm watching you heal a 19 key. This looks easier than my 12 keys. It's like, well, a lot of encounters are like that, right? Because it's like, well, either everyone does the mechanics and there's very little damage, or people are failing the mechanics and they just die. While it's not true for some fights, right? Like Swamp Face or Mama, for example. Like, yeah, I want to see you heal that, buddy. Come in, guy in the chat. Which why don't you come in here and heal 19 of those guys, right? But other bosses like that one, for example, like they could very easily tune that to deal a good amount of like fair healer damage, and then just have those be massive damage downs or whatever.
Yeah. I overall though I like the fight. I think it could also or alternatively just use a visual improvement. Like the clones are really hard to see. If you don't know what you're looking for, those things are not visible, right? Like they're pink with the line under them too. I think they could do something regarding that. Like have them have that little like, soak tornado or I don't know, maybe have a line between you and them or something like that, like to show that it's like your soul, you're connected type thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, maybe, I don't know, like if they could do a specific animation or sound for the first one to kind of draw your attention. Because let's say you start the fight and you've never done the fight before. Maybe they don't need to do this and it would be too much clutter, but let's say the first clone spawns and I mentioned on Fractilius or whatever how it does the dun when you're targeted. Maybe just play that sound and then make the arrow over the clone much bigger or whatever for that very first one, just to kind of be like, hey, this is important, look at this.
Yep,
When you don't necessarily know to look for that, but they don't have to. Doing it for every clone of the fight would be a little rough.
I agree. All right.
But yeah,
Well,
overall, I really like the dungeon. I think that while there are some drawbacks, overall the fights I think are good. I think that all of the mobs jumping is a little bit obnoxious. I can understand having, maybe one mob type that does that, but to have three different mob types that jump around and hit people, I think they're going a little bit too crazy with that. But overall, I'm a big fan of the dungeon. I think next season's dungeon pool is going to be really, really good.
I think so too. I mean, this coming week is the War Within dungeons, right? The 4 voted ones.
Yeah, and we get to see all of the changes in
Yes.
the old dungeons.
I think that will be fun because I've heard there are some decent amount of them too. So even the ones from season 2, and I think I mentioned some of them on the show. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to play with my friends and not having to do the same dungeon over and over. Not that I don't like Ecodome, but there's only so many times you can do a
exactly,
dungeon.
exactly. All right, let's talk about Mythic Plus, more Mythic Plus. But we learned a little more about the Mythic Plus lever system, which has people kind of enraged. I was kind of surprised by that, girl. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so I think we talked about it. There was some data mine strings, and we knew what they were trying to do, and now we actually got to see how the lever system works in game. Um, I'm a little bit mixed on the topic. So the one thing that I like about it is it's very clear with the messaging across the board what it's doing, and it also doesn't look like some patched in piece of crap. It looks like a reasonable WoW interface sort of thing, which is kind of a big undertaking for them to just throw into a random patch here. Clearly something that they've been cooking up for a while. I do like that. However, it's a little weird. Like it doesn't really feel like WoW. It feels like I'm playing some League of Legends or like some random game, and it's like, oh, I just queue in and then I'm like I don't like I get that WoW isn't really an MMO anymore, but like it's one of those things to me that's taking it even further away from it of like, oh, we're in an instance and no vote to forfeit or whatever, and it pops up and I've like, oh, we get taken out of the instant. Yeah, I don't. It's just different. It's very, very different. I love the fact that they're doing stuff to combat levers. So I don't want to. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. It just feels very, very different in the game.
Hmm. So I think the things that we learned from this are there is a string that indicates that the key holder your vote is worth more. So that could be really interesting because if it is your key, technically you have more at stake here. Your vote is worth more, which it kind of depends what the threshold is. Was this available? Did you test this at all, girl? Because I actually
Yeah.
didn't.
So actually, the key holder being worth more was a very, very good thing that they came up with. Essentially, one of the big debates in the system was how would it work, right? Would you need at least four people to agree that the key is depleted? Would you need three people? Would you need five? And it was kind of hard to draw a line where exactly it would be. And now the way it currently works is you need four votes, but the key holder counts as two votes. And so
Ah,
technically, if the key holder doesn't want to forfeit, then you can't really forfeit unless everybody else wants to. But if the key holder wants to forfeit, it's actually quite easy and you only need two other people, if that
interesting.
makes sense. Yeah. So I actually really like that change because obviously the key holder is more at stake, right? It's their key.
Yep.
It also makes it easier for them if I mean, this is not nearly going to be a big problem, but let's say the key holder really wants to do it on a lower level, right? They do a 19 and okay, I need the 18 for score, or I want this dungeon on an 18, but their team won't forfeit and they're going to finish the key, right? Like it's so rare that that's going to happen, but it will happen even less because the key holder will be more easily able to forfeit. Um, the system was a little buggy on PTR. It was very obnoxious because it would like constantly pop up. It definitely felt out of place being that like I'm playing with four of my friends and we're just hanging out and playing together, but like we have to do this forfeit thing or whatever.
How long did
Um
it take? Like,
So there's the way it works from what I understand so far is you can't forfeit right away. Like if you just go into a key and then wipe on the first pull and try and forfeit, the vote just didn't come up. There was no anything that I saw that would communicate why or anything. It just wouldn't come up. Which is interesting. It's very, very interesting that that's the case.
It's
I think,
leaks. It's leaks
yeah,
FF15.
FF15, yeah, right. So I think for pugs, that probably is a good thing, right? That people can't do that. For an organized group, especially if you're doing a Brazil key with your friends and you're doing a really tough first pull, that might get very annoying. So that was one thing. I also saw that I don't think you can put up a vote in combat, or it might not go through until you end combat, which is good in the sense that you can't like pop up stuff on people's screen in the middle of combat, but also it creates some interesting situations. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the one Azeroth TV guy. He's actually a YouTuber that I like watching that pugs a ton
Yeah,
of
you
keys.
mentioned it before.
Yeah, and he plays Blood DK and he hates levers. And I know that guy will sit there and just tank a boss for 15 minutes straight so that his team won't be able to forfeit just because they're in combat. 100% that I know that guy will do that. I know he will do that. Again, I think if like I don't know exactly how it'll work, or maybe the other 4 people will be able to forfeit, but that's definitely an interesting quirk of the system as well. One thing that I worry about, I'm very someone brought this up to me, and the more that I think about it, the more that I think it's going to be true. I don't want to discuss this to death because everyone's going to hate us. Oh, Growl hates, Growl loves levers. But I actually think this system will make people want to quit more. And the reason being is that it is so much easier to throw up a forfeit vote socially than to like be that guy that types in chat, hey, let's give up, right? Like it creates a very easy way for you to tell your team that you want to give up. Whereas before, for most WoW people, we're kind of antisocial. We're just trying to go along with the flow. We're just trying to play some video games. Like, I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, by the way, this key is bricked. Can we leave? Right? Like, even if I think that, I'm not going to be the guy that'll type that in chat. But now, if I think a key's bricked, I just throw up a forfeit vote. It's so easy. Just slash abandon. And everyone else, people might just click yes because they're like, hey, this guy wants to forfeit. I don't care. Maybe I'll forfeit. I actually wouldn't be surprised if this increases the amount of keys that people give up on because it's easier to mutually come up with the idea that they're gonna leave. Does that make sense? Is that a crazy idea or no?
I think that makes sense. I think it shows intent, but I think our intent is already shown when somebody asks Brazil ? Like at your key, like 1 minute.
Yep, that's
in.
the new one. Yep.
I think what you said about like you can't leave early is kind of really interesting because like we mentioned there's the flag if you leave too many keys, right? Did you test that at all?
I did not see it at all on PTR, and it was really buggy to the point where we weren't even sure if it was keeping track or how it was working.
Right.
Apparently, Dorky said in his experience playing on PTR that he joined a group one time, and when he joined the group, it came up with a message that said this group has one or more users that frequently leave keys, and I don't even think it told him who it was.
Oh, God.
I think
okay.
he literally just joins the party and it warned him that there was a lever in the party.
So more testing is needed there. Got it.
Yes,
so
it's
like,
definitely, they're still working on it for sure.
The thing that you said about like not being able to leave early, I almost think that the what you're gonna do as like a group of friends is you're just not gonna give a crap. You're just gonna
like, so that's exactly what I was thinking.
If you're doing Brazil like 19 or something like that, and you're like, all right, we gotta get this first pull of Cinderbrew down. Oh, we wiped. All right, just zone out. Like somebody, like this guy already has the lever penalty, but it doesn't matter because you guys are just playing with a group of friends, and you know that he's not actually leaving. He's just leaving so you guys can zone out faster, right? Like the one thing that will suck is if it takes an additional like 30 seconds to, if there's a timer, 5 minutes to zone out of a key legit. Which I get for pugs, but that's going to really suck for anyone doing Brazilian keys.
Well, I just wonder if it ends up getting a situation where it becomes a joke, right? Like, can't you see this happening where Dorky or Now or somebody like one of the top teams just eventually says like screw it, I don't care about dealing with this, I'm just going to start leaving these keys, not leaving in pugs but just leaving their own team
Yeah,
keys, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then eventually all of the top players just start getting marked as leaver, and it just becomes like a meme, right? Like you go into group finder and like the top keys and just everybody who's in the top keys is marked as a leaver because eventually you don't care, which I think actually is kind of, it's weird but it's fine, right? Because
I think it's
the
fine.
lever system isn't really made for people doing
Correct.
19s or people playing in regular groups, right? The lever system is mainly meant for, being out in the streets doing
Tens
the
to 12s and below.
10s to 12s where people are gearing up, especially where people really hate levers. And to me that's fine. Like that's what the system is for. It does feel, I don't know, I think that people will be surprised at how many keys get forfeit. Like if you've played League or Dota, well, not Dota because there's no forfeit, but Han, like you've probably been in a game one time that you knew was 100% winnable, but some guy just puts up a forfeit vote and you're just like, screw this, and you just click it too, and it just gets forfeited. Like it was literally, it became a meme when we were playing where like someone would die in their cooldowns that they would just put up a forfeit vote, and some of those passed. We would just exit the dungeon and it's total. And obviously this is PTR, so it's not the same as live, but I think the lever system will actually increase the amount of mutual disbands by quite a bit. Is
Interesting.
what I think people will be surprised. Another thing that someone mentioned that I think this is easily fixable by the system is right now when you forfeit a key, it ports you to the start of the dungeon and takes you out of the instance, which I kind of like. I think that should be consensual though. Like, let's say you're in a key and you just want to like mess around in a dungeon. Like, I don't think you should get ported out of the dungeon because your team forfeit, especially if you didn't even vote to forfeit. What if you want to like, hey, I'm in a 19, let me go see this, or let me go look at this, or I want to test this jump. Like being forcefully taken out of a dungeon by other people is kind of stupid, I think. I think like it's so simple they could literally just pop up with a box that says like you will be ported out and then you can just click no. Like I think that's not too hard of a fix. I don't know if they'll do that. Like I think that's kind of a small concern, but I think it's just one more thing that adds on to the gross feeling of like, oh, we're in a League of Legends game now.
Yeah. I think like the last few things that I want to test is like how often after a failed vote can you vote again? Because I know there's a timer in like League that if a vote fails, you can't do it
Mhm.
again for like 2 minutes or something like that, or however long. Because I don't think you want to be trolled with abandon like in this
Yeah, for
either.
sure.
So
Yeah.
and then like the other question I have is just like I wonder what the symbol actually looks like.
Yeah, I have. So that's all I've heard is Dorky mention that one time he joined a group and it had that message. I haven't seen. Maybe I should go on PTR and look and see now if there's anybody like it. But yeah, I want to see the big red brandish on somebody's name when they apply to my group.
Yeah, I think like the mark won't matter in high keys. Like in the top of the line keys, the mark doesn't mean crap because most of those keys are disbanding mutually anyways. Because all of those people who are pushing the highest keys are doing it mutually, specifically for timing, right? Like it's very rare that there's a group at that point going for completion. So everybody is under the same social contract of we're gonna time this or we're going, we're leaving. But in the lower keys, that's
Yeah,
not the case at all, and that's where the system's really going to matter, where that mark is really going to matter and actually mean something, versus Jang B wearing the mark because they're trying to do Priory 19 doesn't mean crap.
oh yeah, I would have that mark. Yeah, I think, and this is something that a lot of the debate comes down to, which nobody knows, right? Of how, like, where are these levers coming from, right? Like, are there really people that are that vicious that are constantly leaving keys all the time? Like, you just don't know, right? Maybe not. Um, I think a majority of leaves probably come from just like normal people who are fed up or having a bad day or whatever, or just mad about the key or whatever. And I don't think it's going to change too much. But for however many of those users there are that are extremely toxic and leave very frequently, like they will be weeded out by the system, right? Like there's no argument that if you're somebody who frequently joins keys and leaves them if you're not happy, like I've heard stories about guys, like one thing I actually hear that's pretty common that people say is they think people leave because they don't want to have a deplete on their Raider IO page. And so if they think the key's going to be depleted, they just leave because they don't want it to get finished because they want it to look like they time all their keys or something, which is in my mind is ridiculous. Like that would never cross my mind, but I think some people think that. So either way, like if they're I would argue that there probably aren't as many problem users in the system right now that people think, but it's going to weed them out. And if there are more than I think, then it may significantly improve people's gameplay. And again, I foresee in high keys either A, it'll actually be a convenience where it's like, hey, slash abandon, bam, out of the dungeon even quicker, or it'll be a joke and everyone will have the brand that's doing 18 keys or above because of resilient keys. And then,
Yeah.
it'll just be like a meme.
I mean, I think the thing that people are most traumatized about, and I saw some Reddit threads on this, and people have talked about it, is like getting held hostage in a key. But like, if it's 4 and there's one person that is trying to hold you hostage, you, assuming they are not the key holder, you can just overrule them, right? Like,
Right. It would
wait,
need to
even,
be.
even
It
if
would need to be.
even if they are
Yeah.
the key holder, you can overrule them.
Yes. Yes. If it's just the key, any one person cannot stop you. Right. It needs to be multiple people that stop you. I mean, honestly, some of the hostage comments that I hear are from people that sound pretty toxic. Like these are people who I hear things like, oh, I'm in a team with a bunch of donkeys and I'm doing everything and they're not kicking. They don't deserve me to stay in this key and finish. Like, why do I have to stay with these guys and finish the key? Like, blah, blah, blah. But to me, that almost reads as like, that's the toxic guy that's saying that. I think the one, but it will happen sometimes. Like, if you have the ability to say screw you to somebody, I don't know, as long as people, the way I see it is, as long as people are in the key playing, I don't think there's really many problems with the system. Like, for example, let's say you're in a key and you've wiped to Big Mama 4 times and there's 10 minutes left in the key and your team doesn't want to forfeit, right? To me, that kind of feels like they're just being annoying and they're like holding you hostage, right? Because like, why are we in this key? Because you can leave when the timer's out, right? So for example, if you've wiped on Big Mama 4 times, you're not going to finish that key in that 10 minutes. And if someone wants to leave, they're going to leave after that 10 minutes is out, right? Like just because you don't vote to forfeit doesn't mean that person is finishing the dungeon. They're going to leave when the timer's out. So like, it's like a mini hostage situation, right? Where they're like, forcing you to sit there for 10 minutes because they're mad that you depleted their key or whatever. But I mean, as long as you're like, I don't know, like you signed up to do a dungeon for 30 minutes, like as long as they're in the dungeon playing the game, like why not pull Big Mama 2 more times in practice? Like why not fight some packs and just play your character? Like, is it really that bad that you have to sit there for 10 minutes and play your character? As long as you can, there will be situations where people will be AFK or sitting there and not doing anything, and you just have to sit there with the timer. But number one, that'll be few and far between, and then number two, like you can just leave. It's not like
Yes.
it's not like you're gonna get punished after one leave. Like that's gonna happen probably 1 out of every 20 pugs or 10 pugs or whatever, and you can probably leave most of those times.
And theoretically, like that's what I was gonna say. You can just leave, assuming the system is tuned correctly, which I assume they won't miss on this because it's pretty important. One leave is not gonna get you marked. There's no way, right? Like, there has to be, because that's going to happen naturally due to, I have an emergency, my power went out, my internet went out, or any kind of stuff like that. If you need to leave, just go. Like, just go.
Yeah, I played Dota, and Dota had no forfeit system. I think it still doesn't. And they have, the lever system or whatever. And my account was always on great standing. Like and if I was ever in a troll game, I would leave. Like, and I'm not saying I would do it all the time, but like, if I'm like, these people are clearly trolling me, they're wasting my time, I'm just gonna hit Alt F4 and walk away from my computer and take the penalty. And it never like, it's not like, if you're somebody who feels like that happens every other game, you might be the problem. Like to me, it happened, once every 20 games or 30 games, and if it does, like you just Alt F4 and you walk away. Like who cares?
Yep. Alrighty. I think one more topic here. Just general thoughts on the 11.2 PTR Grell. Where do you want to start with this?
I'm obviously, the reason I bring this up is because I think everybody, oh no, the new PTR is out. Like, what's good? What's the meta tank? What's the meta healer? That's going to be a big discussion. I think balance is like way all over the place right now. Did you get that vibe in raid testing where it was like some classes felt like they were insanely broken? Dude, I'm hearing stories of like Moonkins literally two-shotting mobs and stuff. Like, I'm seeing people like, oh, I don't want to log on to this character because I don't want people to know how good this is. Like, the sandbagging is completely out of control right now.
Let me pull this up. So Champs/Roby created a thing on a spreadsheet on how like PTR logs and stuff like that, and you can like search through and find logs. So it's like kind of really cool. So going through the bosses, there is some clear stuff that's happening here. Marks Hunter busted.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting. Like, Windwalker, Shadow Priest, Balance. I think those are like the four that are like absolutely disgusting right now. And there are other specs that are not nearly. I mean, granted, they're probably at the point of the PTR cycle where they haven't started class tuning yet, which is fine. But also, just like, we usually get, I feel like, an extra month before raid testing where they fix bad tier sets, and then as raid testing starts, we start doing class tuning. But it almost feels like we're a month behind, and now class tuning is like a month from now after raid testing ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I still have some faith. On one hand, I think that this season, at least in Mythic Plus, and potentially at least like, somewhat in Raid, has been one of the most balanced seasons of all time in terms of how many classes you can bring in and make work and how, I mean, there's been two full different compositions that people are running in high keys. Like there's so many good classes right now. I understand not every class is good, but I think that balance is really good, and I fully expect that it's not going to be as good next season. Not to say that, I'm saying that it's a disaster, but this season was just great, and I think people are going to get a little bit spoiled by this. So expect to see a little bit more of a meta going into next season. And I think people do care a lot about that. They want to see, oh, Shadow Priest is OP, Marks Hunter is OP, and it's good that you brought that up. Maybe even remember to link that in the comments if you can,
Oh,
because I
good
know
call.
people do like to see it and they do put weight into it. Personally, I think we're both of the opinion that I wouldn't worry about anything that you see on the PTR right now.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are going to change. Just look at how classes are playing or what you
Here's the
find
healer one, by
fun.
the
And
way.
uh
Prez for Soul Hunters, looking real
yeah,
good. Look,
yeah, I think there's probably not a lot of people playing Holy, but I actually think Holy's. I think Prez and Holy are both gonna be doing like crazy, crazy numbers next year. I'm surprised to see Mistweaver still up there. I feel like that healer's been pretty quiet.
I,
Yeah,
I'm.
and Dispriest in the
Where's
gutter for
Disc?
sure.
Disc, Disc.
There was one
Oh,
right
there's
there.
one right here. I mean, granted, I think Disc requires some specific timings, which nobody's gonna know beforehand of testing, right? You need to know when the damage is coming in and prep beforehand. Nobody's gonna know that on raid testing because you're just kind of figuring it out. So, Holy Priest is definitely the preferred spec for testing, I think, for priests.
Yeah, that's possible. Maybe there were some better people playing Holy. I think Holy's tier set and like with their hero talents is really, really, really strong.
Yeah.
Prez has been buffed 5 times. Like Prez got gutted with Flame Shaper when that was really, really strong, and I feel like slowly those nerfs are being unwound, and I think Prez is back to doing insane healing.
Yeah.
Also, it's possible with like these crazy big platform end bosses that the mobility of having evokers is going to be more important again. I kind of feel like based off the current conversation that they're somehow going to try and make DKs really OP, and everyone needs 3 DKs for grips.
Oh
Um,
God, that's a whole discussion.
yeah,
Ooh.
I think, yeah, in general though, I think that in terms of healers and M plus, I think it's going to be, it'll be very like what DPS are tuned related, if that makes sense. Like I think every healer with the new like tier sets and like with the power creep is so insane. Every healer is going to be putting out so much healing that no one is going to walk into like a 12 or a 15 and feel like, oh no, I can't heal this with this healer. But I think with the meta, we may end up in a situation where it's like, oh, nobody's playing Mark of the Wild, or there's no other druid specs that are good, or oh, we need Mind Soothe for these skips or something like that. So I think although the meta might not appear good, I think like all healers will be really strong in M plus.
Yeah, I think we're at the point right now where I feel like last season 2 started, because remember there were some absolutely brutally like OP tier sets and some that were massively undertuned.
Yes, yeah. Beginning of the seasons have both been really buggy, or not
Yeah.
buggy, I guess, but yeah, just a little undercooked.
So I think like hopefully they go through and they have enough time this time to go through and like actually sort this stuff out. Cuz they absolutely did not last time. They did not have enough time and tier sets were definitely left by the wayside.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not super optimistic about the balance, but I think we're definitely not in a place where we can make any judgments about things yet.
All right. You mentioned something interesting about the raid, which is the DK raid buff. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, just a really really funny aside. So basically, in the class changes, they added a line there in the DK thing that said something about 2% haste. Right away, like everyone's first instinct, right, was like, oh, DK's getting a raid buff, right? They're gonna get a 2% haste buff, and then Blizzard right under it, basically said, we're removing grippy hands, and then they basically just said they want grip and AMZ to be like a raid buff, which is just like so weird because I mean this has been discussed to death, but I just find it very very funny that basically what they did with AMZ is they made it so it's a 15% flat number. Like, basically, they're changing it back to how it was, where it doesn't have a cap. It's a flat damage reduction, but they just increase the cooldown on it, I think, by a lot, which is a pretty big nerf for M plus, which DKs will not be happy about. The funny thing is, an AM's like that has nothing to do with being a raid buff, right? Like that is not how raid buffs work. Like a raid buff is, the way I see it, a system put in place. Like even if your class isn't that good, if you're the main of that person, like you're gonna get a slot in the raid, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're the DK guy, you're gonna get in the raid. That is absolutely not what AMZ is. AMZ is gonna be either DK sucks and it's like you don't bring it, you still don't bring it. Maybe you bring a blood DK if you need grips, or AMZ is crazy and then and your AMZ is good and DK is good, and then you have 4 DKs and you're just
Yeah.
like chaining AMZs in these. It's I don't know. They're like,
It's
that's not what a raid buff is. A raid buff is not something that you can bring multiple of them and then
yes.
it increases in that direction. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, if we're considering like grip or AMZ a raid buff, then we're probably considering like stampeding roar a raid buff. And
Right?
like or like wind rush and like every utility is just considered a raid buff. And this raid doesn't have a lot of grips even. I don't know if
No,
you looked at
yeah.
raid testing. It's like that fourth boss where the ads try to walk towards the like pillars. I like those are grippable, but since you can place where they begin, the only reason to grip them is if somebody screws up. So like your raid buff is fixing somebody's mistake.
Yeah, and like there's so much other like, vortex or whatever that you can use. I mean, what if
Yeah, just
like
knock.
they make it in mythic, so like, that's what I kind of think is I think they're gonna randomly like make changes to make it so you need to have grips so everyone brings it, but that's just like such a short-term solution. I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. Like I just don't get it. First of all, I don't really like raid buffs that much. I understand why they exist, but if you're a DK and you're doing dog water damage in your raid and you're only brought because you have 2% haste on everyone, like that doesn't really feel good either, right?
Yep.
Like I think I would prefer if there was just no raid buffs, but they are putting them in the game and it's I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. Like what are they doing here? Why? Especially it was so silly because they gave Shaman a raid buff. Like what?
Yep.
Like to me that was like okay,
And
well they're
Hunter.
just gonna give it. Yeah, to me that was like they're gonna give everybody a raid buff. Like why? It's just such a strange hill to die on. Like I just don't understand what they're doing here. Like I don't know if they're like trying to prove a point or they think like if DK had a raid buff it would be too OP, but like no it wouldn't, right? Because it's not like you bring 4 DKs if it has, it's because it's not how it works.
My favorite thing about it
Uh,
was they baited, I'm pretty sure, half the community into thinking that 2% haste buff talent was a
yes,
raid buff because they
yep,
put it at the very top and then
yep,
talked
yep.
about raid buffs right after it. And
Yeah, so you pull up that page, you see 2% haste, and then you see developer notes something about raid buffs, and you're like, it was here, and they just griefed everybody with that. So in turn, I think the DK Discord has created the DK is not a raid buff hashtag that does absolutely nothing, but we're seeing it pop up now in people's stream titles and
dude,
stuff.
like I'm saying it like kind of ironically whenever we were doing raid testing and like whenever we were doing just like farm this week in Undermine, it's like we need our DK raid buff. We need our DK raid buff.
Yep.
It's so like it's a meme. I know the DKs are really upset as they should be, but I don't know that they're actually gonna get anywhere with it. Maybe like I didn't expect the shaman raid buff to happen. That was for sure. And then suddenly they just wasn't that War Within like right before launch or something?
Yeah, it was really unexpected, I remember.
So I think the other thing that really bothers me is like anything that a DPS DK can do, a blood DK does better, right? Like shorter cooldown grip, right? Like that probably being the big one, and also I think longer range grip and also AoE grip. And it's just Man,
Yeah, I see it a little more as a higher end problem because that's sort of a healer thing too, right? Like essentially the way it works when you're trying to build a comp is anything that doesn't have to do with raw output, you would rather just pawn it off to your tanks and healers, right? Like
exactly.
if you need a DK or like you need a raid buff and that class sucks, well, then have the sucky healer, the sucky tank rather than the sucky DPS, right?
Yep.
Because you lose too much as a raid damage wise. I think for most people that doesn't matter too much. However, people still do follow the meta, right? Like there still is a meta. Like even if that doesn't matter that much, like people will still be like, "Oh, DK sucks. Like I gotta have a blood DK in the raid because Liquid does, even though I'm a heroic guy, you know."
I even if they did another like Farak or Brood Twister where you really wanted to like mass grip style stuff, you're just gonna bring two blood DKs because of mass grip. Now that A bomb limb is gone, right? Like A bomb limb was an equalizer between the DPS and the tank DKs. But now that's gone, and now Blood DK just has such a big advantage that how do you design for grips to be included, but not so that mass grip is a requirement? And I'm pretty sure the answer is it doesn't exist, or it's so awkwardly tangible that it's just not fun. Right? Like
Yeah.
Farak Intermission or Brood Twister, you need mass grip. That just incentivizes Blood DK, but not Unholy DK or Frost DK. Single grips. Well, you know, why wouldn't you just knock them? Or, that kind of stuff, or kick them then let them walk in. Why would you be forced to grip them? And yes, there have been times when that has been good, such as I think like Sparks on a Rygalon maybe, where you like grip the spark close to kill it early or something like that. Like, but again, that's such a rare circumstance because you just needed an ad to die early for some specific reason that it's just not tangible to do on every single raid tier or on every single fight. So like I totally get why the DKs are upset, and I don't blame them. So yeah,
Yeah, just a funny note that's going on in the community right now I wanted to mention.
yeah. And then you gonna mount farm tomorrow, Grell, or I guess today when you're
Oh hell yeah. The
so
collector's bounty
yeah.
dramatically improving drop rates of older mounts. It's like a month-long event I think they're doing.
Yeah, it's for the entire month, 5% drop plus 5% drop rate bonus is what they've said. It works on all pre-Dragonflight mounts and select items. So, if you need an old raid, you like Mim's Head or Invincible or Thunder Fury or Warglaves, like now would be the time to get them. Get some lockouts
Wait, what
going.
does plus 5% drop rate mean?
The assumption is you add 5% to the drop rate, as in if it was a
Because
1% drop rate, it's now a
yes,
6%.
but there are a lot of things that are like 0.1% drop rate or less, right?
So now it's a 5% drop rate, essentially, yeah.
Wow. That is a huge buff. That is not what I'm
So
understanding that
they
right?
originally said up to 10 times.
Yeah, that's what I remember seeing in the initial thing. So they changed it.
Yeah, they now say plus 5%, which is probably still true, depending on the initial drop rates, but I think this is a
Oh
lot easier for
boy.
people to understand. I mean, it's good if you're looking for something, right? Like, I think if you're after a really cool mount, like farming the same thing week after week after week on multiple alts just isn't exactly great gameplay. So,
I think so. I definitely don't. I'm just gonna point out from my perspective. I think this is just like a random cool thing that they're trying to do to let people, give stuff for people to do right now. I definitely see more people in my friends list now not logging in, or I notice they're in Rivendreth right now, and I'm like, what are and it's like, well, everyone just kind of doing their own thing and playing single player, right? Like towards the end of the patch. So I like that idea. I'm not in the, anywhere in the mount collector, that sort of circle. Me personally, I'm definitely like way on the snobby kind of like guy side where like once I get my mounts, I'm like, nobody else can have these. I want to feel rare, blah, 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 right? Like I definitely understand that. I don't really think that WoW is like that kind of a game. And I think in general, like most people just like to collect stuff, and they're happy to see other people collect stuff too. So I think that in general this is going to be received well. But who knows? Maybe some people might be upset by this, but I
Yeah.
don't know. People will be upset by anything in WoW.
Have you seen this tweet from former bench member Tettles?
Oh, I did not. Oh
This is
yeah, there's been a couple of these meme tweets. Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is actually lowering the prestige of mounts. Back in my day, mounts were exclusive and meant something. Players will always complain whenever they have to overcome any amount of adversity. Sad. Hashtag keep mounts exclusive. Hashtag no changes.
The funny thing is, I think at certain points of WoW's history and many other games, I think this would be valid. But I think there's just way too much stuff, right? Like there's just so much stuff in WoW that like you don't like I don't know, like you don't really have the one thing you're proud of, right? Like if you're a mount collector, you probably have hundreds of rare mounts at this point, right? So it's I don't know. I think the prestige or like the specificity of having any one individual thing doesn't really apply anymore, I think. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm not necessarily part of this community, but I think that I mostly this will just be received well among the casuals or whatever, and just who knows, like maybe it's an excuse to maybe I will start a little mount farming routine and just learn a couple bosses to kill and start doing it, and then that might be part
Do
of my
it.
routine or whatever.
It can be fun for you to just yap on stream while farming some mounts.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I was talking about this with some people before, and one problem about the game now is there's not any mandatory content that you have to do to log in, right? You basically just log in and do whatever you want. It does feel like then in times like this that the game kind of feels dead, right? Like I have the luxury, and you do too, with a little bit with a guild of like you have a Discord full of people and people that that if you wanted to get them to log on to the game and play, you could find them. But if you didn't have those deep connections with people and you log in, you're gonna see your friends list much, much more empty than it was earlier in the season or in the
Yep.
first season. And I think that doing things like this is maybe them experimenting with, okay, how do we get people online and having fun doing stuff? Because like who knows, like this was something that I did. So I farmed the trench coat from the whatever guys,
Oh, the
right? That
dark fuse.
10-hour farm. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
talking about the dark fuse trench coat, right? But that was not me farming for 10 hours straight. Like I was literally farming that, and then some guy would be like, yo, you want to come play in a key? And I'd be like, sure. And then I'd go do some keys, right? And then I'd come back and I'd farm for another hour or two, and then something would happen. And it's like things that keep you like feeling happy about being logged into the game are really, really good. So I think that maybe this is an interesting kind of experiment for them of like, what if there's like a rotating thing, where like one expansion has a mount drop rate bonus every month, and so like oh, everyone farms that for that, whatever. I don't know. I just in general I just like getting people to log in, but having forcefully doing it kind of feels bad, right? When it's like, oh, you got to do your dailies every day to log in, or else your
Yeah.
character falls behind.
I mean, I kind of like the, I, I think WoW's holiday events have been a little rough, like a little dated. And if this is kind of like their
Yeah.
new cool thing to log in, like, you have let's just use the most common example probably of Fortnite. You have the Star Wars crossover and the, I pay attention to Fortnite,
Yeah,
Marvel crossover.
All the other Fortnite things that we totally know about because we pay attention to Fortnite. All we know is that Fortnite's probably way cooler than WoW. We don't know what they're doing, but it's definitely way cooler than what we have.
They're doing all the crossovers regardless. Like there's always something cycling to like make somebody who maybe wants to come back in the middle of a season in addition to their season launches. And this might
Right.
be like their launch. We have Legion remakes coming up, whatever other cooks they're doing in the kitchen, and obviously our season launch. So like that might be what they're doing. Because also tomorrow, we have the Greedy Emissary event starting. For the month alongside this, where it's the Diablo crossover, and you get what is essentially tier 2 recolors, which I think some of these look pretty cool.
What do you? So what do you? So I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't know, but what exactly is this? Like, what do you have to do?
Do you
There's like
remember the
treasure goblins or something?
treasure goblins spawn in the major cities? You kill the treasure goblins, and that's about all I know.
Oh man, dude, Treasure Goblins brings back bad memories. I don't know if you played Diablo 3 on launch, but I was actually playing hardcore on launch, and I was playing like pretty. I didn't play with all of them, but like around the area of like Criparian and
Yep.
what was that other guy's name, and like Hafu and stuff. That was like before the last boss had been killed, right? Because that game was really, really hard. And the way that you would get good loot in hardcore was you would just treasure goblin farm. Like everybody
Yeah.
would go in different lobbies and you would just look for treasure goblins. One person would find them. Okay, everyone get in here because it's hardcore, right? You were so scared to progress in harder content, but it was so hard
Yeah.
to get loot.
It was also
Thinking
overtuned as
about
hell on launch.
yeah, oh yeah, it was incredibly difficult, yeah. But yeah, treasure goblin farming will definitely bring back some great memories for me.
Yeah, so apparently you go through, you get tier 2 recolors. Seems cool. Like, is it the coolest thing in the world? No, but it's something, for people who like a set. It's something. It's a reason to log in, but it doesn't require you do it, right? Like, I think that's kind of the way it should be, right? Like, if you want to play, cool. If not, like, see you next time because we have a new season soon. TM. So
I really like mounts and transmog stuffs as rewards, mainly because I think it's actually pretty like so. There's obviously player power is one of the biggest things, or like the single biggest thing. But I think mounts and transmogs, like they stretch across a lot of different types of players, you know. You don't necessarily have to be a collector to decide, oh, let me do this farm or whatever. Like maybe you just like the set, or maybe, hey, maybe someday I might want to collect this and I'm bored. Let me just try the treasure goblin event, you know. I think that especially when they do, bring back old tier sets and recolors and cool stuff like that, I definitely support this for sure.
yeah.
Even if it isn't like the most fun and engaging thing. And realistically, I'll probably kill one treasure goblin and then be like, I'm bored, and then just
I mean,
do something else.
I believe they spawn like on the hours and all that, so you can literally just park your character in a capital city and play
Oh,
while you're playing code names or something.
oh, that's kind of cool because actually that might create a little bit of buzz in the city too, right? Like, oh, the treasure goblin's gonna spawn. Like people type stupid stuff in chat, and like there's a big pile of people. If you don't know what it is, you'll see that pile of people and be like, oh man, actually that's kind of cool.
I remember having a dragonflight, like the not Dornagal, what was it? Valdrakken.
Valdrakken.
Yeah, they would like spawn all over the city. You'd have people flying around, like try to tag the treasure goblins. It was kind of cool. Like, it is what it was. I'm not opposed. I'll probably do a little bit for the transmogs because they do look kind of cool. So,
Hell yeah.
all right, something I want to bring up because I'm mad about this. I'm actually mad about
Bushy's
this.
rant time. Let's hear it.
Classic is resetting all cooldowns of 90 or more seconds on encounter end. We don't fucking have this on retail. And they're doing this on Classic.
Yeah.
Why isn't this a thing on retail?
There's like a meme that all the SOD devs and all the other devs are now back on. They're working on MOP, and there's like all these changes that everyone wanted for Classic Kata that are now coming into the game, and like they're actually doing like tuning and stuff too.
Yeah, the tuning's great. Like, don't get me wrong, but like this singles me out because the number of times this tier alone, where my Unholy Decay, my Windwalker Monk, the dev of the Evoker Defensive is a minute and a half. What else? Warrior is a minute and a half. Any House of Cards is a minute and a half. They just don't reset on encounter, and you're sitting there for a minute, like, all right, see you guys in a minute. Like, I don't know why.
I don't mean to self-report, but Arcane Mage does have some cooldowns like
That's
that
true.
as well. And I do some resilient keys at times, and there have definitely been keys where you reset the key and then you walk back to the pack and then you realize your button is not up yet.
And you walk back out.
Oh yeah, there's that Priory of the Sacred Flame. Anybody who's done that key at a high level knows you wipe to the first pull, go back, send it again, walk up, and then realize you don't have your cooldowns, and then just die and walk out again.
I don't think you need to go to a minute. I could be wrong on that, but the time that whether you're resetting a resilient key or you're recovering after a wipe and raid, I think 60 seconds, even if you just press it the second you die, you shouldn't be waiting that long, if at all, right? Like 10 to 50-second pull timer, 10-second Master Res cast, time to get your health full and recover mana. Like, you're probably approaching a minute. But 90 seconds, that 30 seconds is so painful when you're like, we hit 1%, let's just go. And you're like, well, my cooldown isn't up. So that's my rant. Anything you want to bring up?
Hopefully they add it in the game. That is really funny because I saw you put the Mists of Pandaria thing in the show notes, and I'm thinking, did I put that there? There's no way Squishy Tettles put that there. But that makes perfect sense.
Came out right before this, and I was annoyed. Anything you want to bring up?
No, I think we went through all the PTR stuff. Definitely, gonna be a fun couple weeks. It's probably gonna be a lot of like dungeon related stuff coming up because we got all four of the new dungeons. So next week will be about more dungeon stuff and dungeon changes.
Yep.
Speaking of dungeons, we have some Q&A that are dungeon related.
We do.
Oh no, I just opened up the first one. DKs were promised grip as a raid buff moving forward. Is it actually a raid buff after seeing raid testing? Do any light fights require grips? Yeah, it doesn't look like it, but I expect them to do that. Like basically, so what happened in Dragonflight, they introduced Evoker, and it really felt like a lot of the fights had very good mechanics, and like you were very happy bringing Evokers to those fights. I kind of expect, because this is such a topic now, that they're going to purposefully just make it feel like you need a DK on a bunch of really important fights for some time, and then eventually they're going to forget, and then it's going to be the same as it was. But right now, the raid does not look like there are important grips, no.
It doesn't look like it. There's a possibility. Like there are some ads that are mythic only that could be grippable. I'm not holding hope for them, but we will see. We will see.
Uh-oh, this is one that I don't know the history of. Optional boss in 11.2 will be Yogg Saron all over. Kill it to make it easier, skip it to make it harder. Oh, so he's saying like, is he saying that if you don't kill the boss, then it makes the other bosses harder?
So the way
what is he saying there?
the way Yogg Saron worked was before you got to Yogg Saron, you had to defeat 4 keepers.
Were these bosses or just trash
bosses,
mobs in the raid?
Bosses.
Okay.
There are 4 bosses. There was Freya, some leaf boss, Thorum. They're after the gods basically. Mimiron, yeah. And I don't remember the last one. Oh well. Either way, you could get their help during the Yogg Saron encounter. And they give you certain buffs like restoring sanity or damage reduction or stuff like that. But you could say, I don't need your help to any of them or all of them. And it was called Lights in the Darkness. So 4 Lights in the Darkness was all 4 helpers. And that scaled all the way down to 0 Lights in the Darkness where you did the fight on what is essentially hard mode. And there was achievements for like each one, and you got additional loot or something like that. It was a while ago. I don't exactly remember. But
so what's this guy's what's his theory?
I don't know what this is asking though.
Yeah, because that would be the reverse, right? That would be like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing it here.
I think this might be saying like, if you kill it, it makes a future boss easier. If you skip it, it makes a future boss harder. But like, I don't see that being the case.
It doesn't look like there's like, I feel like that would be something where we would have figured it out by now.
Probably. All right.
All right, last one. What if instead of maybe I should like read people's names and tell them. I'm just like reading the questions. Whatever, we're gonna ignore all. Thank you for your questions. I'm not reading your names. What if in M+ instead of being infinitely scaling damage and health, each key level increase the mechanical difficulty, like slightly faster casts per key level, avoidable. Oh, like certain circles could increase, knockback distances increase, lockouts are longer from things like the shouts or kicks, breakpoints where additional casters or trash is needed. Eventually casts would be like instant and stuff, but the trade-off would be no longer scaling damage or health. What do you think about that?
I think you always need damage or health. I think that's the first thing. Like, I think damage and health is such a fundamental thing because otherwise, if you don't increase that, the DPS, like, it sounds like what you're doing here is you're punishing a lot of mistakes, or you're going into what is the twitchiness, what they called it, the twitchiness of gameplay, or your reaction time.
Yeah.
And that I don't think it's okay difficulty in certain ways, but like, I don't know that a 0.5 second kick is exactly healthy for the game. So I think there are some things that are okay though, like larger area denial on, swirlies, increasing knockback distance on a knockback distance encounter, spell school lockouts longer. Like, I think there are things that make sense. Like, I just don't know that all these suggestions should be a blanket, like, all knockbacks go 5 yards farther type thing.
Yeah, I think the issue that I've always had, and I've kind of thought about this idea before, The issue is that it needs to be so specifically handcrafted, like you said. It's not a matter of you can't really make a blanket, okay, everything in the dungeon does this now. You really have to think about each mechanic and each boss specifically. And there have been ideas like, oh, what if you have a affix that changes the, like like this was an idea very, very often when Tyrannical and Fortified was okay, well, what if Tyrannical made the bosses have more mechanics instead of making it more health and damage, right? And it's like, well, that could work, but it's just so much effort, right? Like, you would basically have to make it so every single boss, the devs are like looking at it and like, how do they change it in every single trash pack? So, in theory, in a perfect world where they could put a bunch of time in, it would be good. But I think, and I just think it would never really happen like that.
I think there's some cool stuff. I know people talked about like when we first had Tyrannical in Battle for Azeroth, instead of Tyrannical having bonus damage, bonus health, it was like bosses have an additional mechanic. And I think I've always thought that was kind of cool, but it would have
Right,
to be
but they'll
like
never.
tailored to the boss and
Right,
not
yeah, that's
just
exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah, like it just wouldn't work. Like
yeah.
obviously, like if that did happen, like obviously as a gamer, you would love to just see all these bosses change and there's all this new stuff, right? But realistically, they're just not gonna like rework and add stuff to every single boss in the entire dungeon pool.
Exactly. But I think there's some cool stuff that they can learn, like longer casts, or like shortening casts to a certain extent is perfectly fine. Like if you give extended casts at low difficulty, I think that's fine, right? Like, if you get locked, like punishing getting locked at a higher difficulty, I think is fine, as annoying as that might be. Just don't get locked, right? Like that's something you have to play around a little more. I think they could tone down the damage scaling. I know that's always been our kind of complaint, right? Like the damage scales pretty heavily
Yep.
and everything's so bursty. So like they could maybe do some of this other stuff, but I don't know that altering things that where you go from like a 9 to a 10, suddenly teaming is active where there are additional casters. Like I don't know that that's exactly
Yeah.
fun gameplay. So
Yeah, that sounds like craziness. That would be too crazy.
it reminds me of it reminds me of beguiling. You remember beguiling?
Oh yeah,
So like
that was the worst.
there were 3 rotations where every week there would be new mobs in different locations. And these weren't
Yep.
like easy mobs. Like one did a massive AoE every like 8 seconds while it was in combat until you killed it. One made all the mobs CC immune, and the third one, your healer spammed Moonfire on it the entire time until it teleported away after like 15 seconds.
Yep. Well, like there was a lot of really dumb quirks. Like the one that made stuff CC immune, that guy just did a bunch of magic damage,
Yeah.
melees, and would just punch the shit out of your tanks.
It only
was
did
like, why
magic
does
damage.
why does this guy even do this? You can't CC the mobs. So like remember there'd be packs that were really tough on the tank, and then not only would you'd have this emissary and you're just punching your head, but then all the mobs are CC immune. So you can't even like typhoon him away or vortex or like help the tank kite. Your tank is just like screaming for his life and all the mobs are running at full speed.
Yeah. Do I remember that was when teaming existed too? There was that pack in Temper of Setherless.
Oh,
Where
that's a classic.
It was like 6 dervishes that avoid emissary, and you're sitting there like,
Yeah, it was basically the
Yeah.
hardest trash pack in the dungeon was 3 of these mobs that would just like zap you and do random damage. But on teaming, it would put 5 or 6 of them in the pack instead of 3, and then the seasonal affix put another mob in it, and so it's just literally the hardest trash pack in the entire dungeon pool doubled. And it's just like you go to this pack and you're just like, well, okay, I guess we just can't kill this.
oh my god. Dude, how far Mythic Plus has come, right? Like, the game has come so far since then, and I think it's
Yep.
they have done such a good job. One thing we actually didn't talk about, that I just want to hit on real quickly. They have added in spell effect. Like how much you can see spell effects. Do you remember seeing that?
Oh yeah, I did see that. I didn't experiment with it all, but basically they added an option in the game that helps. Like basically right now you can filter out some stuff with spells in the options, but some of the problem is it just filters all visuals, like even the enemy spells and stuff too that you might want to see. So they added a new feature in game that literally just makes only certain party spells less and not enemy spells or important stuff.
Yeah, like this is something that other games have, and I think it's so essential to this game as like visuals are so flashy, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Like I love the fantasy, seeing things like while I'm in Delves and seeing, the big frozen orb and stuff like that on Frost Mage. But I also don't need my party to see my frozen orb in melee range, right? Like, so they said they have 3 options now. They have an everything, reduced, and essential. Everything is, well, everything. Reduced is tuned for what they consider to be ideal for dungeon and raid content. And essential is for players who need the most reduction possible while still retaining WoW's iconic combat look and feel. I haven't tested this, but this sounds good from like a theory standpoint.
Yeah, I haven't tested this either. I'm definitely one of the I like older MMOs too, and I think the visually, like your team seeing what you're doing is cool, and it feels like you're part, blah blah blah. I'm all for that. I just think that WoW's has come way too far, and all the spell effects now are just so crazy, and there's so much stuff going on that you can't have both, right? Like you can't have this crazy mythic bullet hell raid of tons of stuff going on, and I want to see my allies frozen orb because he's really powerful mage. You can't. Unfortunately, like I think this is just a modernizing of the game that needed to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty then. Well, I don't think we got Thor Loser much of a chance to speak. So, anything to say?
Plays. So you basically just alternate EB and EQ for EOGs, then you'll fill with CL on AoE and LB on ST. You will spell Q IF after EB on ST.
Got it. Well, thanks everyone for watching episode 51. See you next time.